Well, good evening, Soul Butterflies. I trust you're having a wonderful Wednesday evening. You are listening to Soma Fusion Radio with your host, Katie Kamara, and coming to you live from the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. We are broadcasting to you live worldwide this fine evening on Facebook Live, soma-fusion.com, YouTube, and the official Global Enlightenment Radio Network.com website, iHeart, Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn, and many, many more. For those who do not know who I am or what I do outside of this radio show, to which many have referred to me as their guardian angel and inspiration for their dreams, I am an international author, life coach practitioner specializing in interpersonal relationships, executive coach, a multidisciplinary in psychology and alternative therapies, the founder of Soma Fusion, Mind, Body and Soul, and the Soma Fusion Academy. There's much to discuss on Soma Fusion tonight. I hope you have your pens and paper handy, and if you don't, just listen, because you can catch the archive of this show later. The official advertisers of Soma Fusion Radio this is your epic moment. So how would you like to take advantage of $1 trillion a day industry and start leveraging money like the big banks? What if you could become the next wolf of Wall Street, a wolf of Wall Street minus the illegal activities? How would you like to take back control of your financial situation, destiny, and future? You too can be successful. To find out more about this, go to thisisyourepicmoment.com. Don't you want to win for once in your life? Go to thisisyourepicmoment.com now. We're also supported by Conscious Apparel Co., and you can go find those guys at consciousapparelco.com, and you can put in the promo code We Are One, all one word, for 20% off of their apparel. We're also supported by ASEA, and you can find those guys at 1-800-285-85370.myasealive.com. We're also supported by Santosha Co., and they are a fresh skincare company, and you can go to their website at santosha.co, and for 10% off of their beautiful natural skincare products, I suggest you go over there, because that's the stuff that I use. FNX Fitness, they're located in North Salt Lake, Utah, and they have supplements of the highest quality to support an active lifestyle. And you can go find those guys at fnxfit.com, promo code COLLAB for 25% off of all of their FNX Fit products. If you support me and my work, you can make a donation via PayPal or Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/SomaFusion. Shout out to my dear friends at PSN Radio Network, Angel Espino from Miami, Florida, World Pirate Radio Network, Jaffe Ryder in Seoul, South Korea, and Vincent Eastwood from the Vinnie Eastwood Show in New Zealand, #1's talk radio show, and SoFlo Radio, #1 online radio digital network in South Florida. I'm also going to mention about the Samaras Education Center, Easy Peasy Solutions, and the Universal Christchurch. I am a lecturer, producer, and manager of, and with the growing number of children and young adults seeking insights, inspiration, education, the paranormal, and the normal, it is our intention to share our experiences, knowledge, and loving care with those seeking metaphysical studies, leading to the certification, and for advanced students, various diploma courses that will be given through the Universal Christchurch, Samaras Education Center, School of Counseling, and the School of Tantra. I will also mention about the Soma Fusion Academy. As I do every week, I encourage you to come and join my challenges to enrich your mind and grow together with the full support of other members of the Soma Fusion Academy by actively engaging with myself and others. Be reminded that you are not alone in your journey of personal development and enrichment of your lives. For more information, go to soma-fusion.com for the Soma Fusion Academy and download the app, or you can just email me with your queries at somafusionacademy@gmail.com. I'm also the co-host of another radio show, Goddesses and Devils, with myself, Amanda McManus, and we will be speaking on various topics that are very taboo in nature, from life psychology, relationships, spirituality, empowerment, and everything taboo, inclusive of sex. So don't miss that show at 7 p.m. Eastern every Saturday evening. And stay tuned to all social media platforms and soma-fusion.com and the Global Enlightenment Radio Network.com for all show times, and keep up with all my work and any announcements to come. For guest appearances, if you wish for me to make an appearance on your show, or you wish to advertise on this show or would like to syndicate this show, please contact me via email at somafusionmedia@gmail.com. For new listeners who have never listened to this show, Soma Fusion Radio, it comes as no surprise. I am a radio show host who likes to raise awareness and educate to empower others to reach individual potential, mind, body, and soul. This is, after all, a program that explores and interviews the biggest names in the industry from the frontiers of consciousness, spirituality, personal growth, and emerging paradigms in psychology, health, various sciences, and innovative philosophies that reflect commitment to the advancement of the individual, social, and global awareness. Listeners will discover that there are no rules to follow or methods to learn. Being in the moment can transform even an ordinary circumstance into a profoundly moving experience while living in the moment. But one thing I do love is to delve into hard topics, especially those that are extremely taboo and critically controversial and extremely academic. To those who are involved in their own beliefs, I explore them with critical open thinking and express them without judgment and social inclusion of all. One thing I'll never do on my show is express for you or to you to jump exclusively onto my boat of values, beliefs, or ideologies, but share them with you as a process of diverse learning as a unified, harmonious community. With that said, I encourage each and every one of you listeners out there who are listening to call in and join our conversation, and please be reminded of this. You don't have to believe anything that I say on this show, but the most important thing for you to do is to research and learn for yourself with an open, curious mind. Tonight we're going to be talking all about love, and I'm going to give it straightforward to you, the blunt truth. So just be aware. And we're going to be talking about why we are so hesitant to say I love you to someone for the first time, and why when the relationship has been established, some people still struggle saying these words, while others say them so often that they almost seem deprived of any meaning. The main issue lies in the meaning of these words. Do you actually know what I love you means? And not many of us do. The love which we feel when we say I love you for the first few times to a new romantic partner is most probably not the same love in which we feel towards the same partner after we've been together for many years. And if we are not too sure of the meaning of I love you, it makes it so much harder to say it for the first time to someone, because frankly, we have no clue what they think it means. Now, if humans would have the inherent characteristics to be alone and happy, perhaps the population would be a lot less, and each one of us would be occupying our own personal island. However, unfortunately and fortunately, we are highly evolved individuals for whom to love and to be loved is a very basic necessity. Hence, being in a relationship is an option which we do choose to ensure our happily ever after life. But with time, only the relationship is left behind with little or no happiness. And this happens because we tend to forget what a relationship really means. But let me give you the definition of love. Love is arguably the most powerful emotion, driving mothers to superhuman feats of strength to save their children, and teenagers to defy all logic and reason in order to be together. But it is also one of the most difficult emotions to explain. What it means to love someone has been debated by philosophers, poets, and scientists throughout the ages. And at its essence, however, love can be broken down into three main components. Love is a feeling. Romantic love begins with attraction, that indescribable feeling in the pit of your stomach that makes you want to be with somebody. If the attraction is solely physical in nature, however, it is lust rather than love. In true love, you genuinely enjoy the other person's company. You miss them when he or she is not around. You think about them frequently and you look forward to your next meeting. You might be wildly different in many ways, but you have shared core values and beliefs about the world that make you compatible. Another important component of the feeling associated with love is freedom. You take pride in each other's accomplishments and are not threatened by each other's success. Neither of you are jealous or clingy. You have faith in your love and its power to see you through the difficult times, and you feel confident and empowered rather than weak and afraid. But love is an action. No matter how compatible you are, you and your loved one will have times of strife, financial difficulties, job concerns, parenting issues, and many other problems will test your love again and again and again. Loving someone means making the tough choice to act in a loving manner. Even when you are tired and overwhelmed, making each other's needs a priority and working together to accomplish shared goals are the hallmarks of true love, especially when the going gets tough. Love is made up of a constant stream of choices and actions, and no matter how long you are together, you must always make the decision to actively show your love. A worthwhile partner will do the same for you. Never stop demonstrating your love through concrete actions that support your partner. Now, we've all heard the phrase, actions speak louder than words. In relationships, this couldn't be further from the truth. But love is an attachment. Now, attachment develops over time. Any new relationship is a heady mix of attraction and excitement about new possibilities, blended with more than a little fear and trepidation. You must navigate the new waters, negotiate the terms and conditions of the relationship, and figure out exactly what and how to proceed together. Only once you have moved through the early stages and become truly comfortable with each other can the attachment phase begin. But once started, however, this is the phase that can last a lifetime. When you are attached, you are comfortable with each other. You understand each other's routines and habits, and have found a new way to live with the things that make you uncomfortable. You know that you are both on the same page as far as the direction and timing of the relationship, and you truly trust each other to be there long term. But saying, "I love you," can be terrifying. Saying "I love you" makes us feel vulnerable and exposed, like we are hanging on the edge of the universe for the few seconds it takes to say such a brief but intense combination of words. Vulnerability itself is terrifying. But when it comes to confessing our love for someone, there are many other factors that make us afraid, even though they are absolutely shouldn't. You're afraid that they won't say it back. Rejection isn't that fun. All we want to hear is "I love you" back. And who doesn't want to have a happy ending? But the essence of love is giving with no expectations of return. Expecting an exact return for what you're offering creates a sense of obligation and makes the relationship heavy from the start. Saying "I love you" doesn't immediately make the object of your love indebted to you in any shape or form. Jack Lacan said, and I quote, "Love is giving what you don't have to someone who doesn't want it." Meaning that when in love, we offer the other person our lack, our flaws. No one really wants that, But if they really love you, they will take it. When you confess your love, you're also offering your lack. You're offering everything that is wrong with you, all your problems and insecurities. And when those are accepted and you're loved back, you'll experience a beautiful thing. However, you can't, and I repeat, you can't expect that will be the case. It's unfair to put anyone on the expectation of accepting your lack. You expect someone else to be responsible for your own happiness? Having a fulfilled relationship is great, but it shouldn't be a complement to your happiness. It should be a complement to your happiness, not the only reason for it. No one is responsible for your happiness but you. And declaring your love for someone is not the same as placing your happiness in their hands. Love is about giving, not about surrendering. If you're giving your love to this person, not surrendering them your power over your happiness, expecting someone else to provide you with happiness is also a major responsibility. And to place it into someone else's hands is not only unfair to the other person, but it sets an unrealistic expectation that they can complete you, which is totally impossible. You believe you're responsible for the other person's happiness. That statement is not only conceited and selfish, but toxic to any relationship. A healthy relationship is not about completing one another or bringing one another happiness, but truly accepting one another so that you can be partners in life. You should be happy together, but you shouldn't be happy exclusively because you're together. Let me repeat that again. You should be happy together, but you shouldn't be happy exclusively because you're together. If you believe you're responsible for the other person's happiness, your fear of disappointing them or of eventually breaking their heart will take over, and saying "I love you" will become extremely terrifying. Replace your sense of responsibility for their happiness with a sense of acceptance for who they are, and the fear should be gone. "I love you" is not a binding promise. When we tend to confuse freely confessing our love with putting ourselves in the other person's hands, entirely at their mercy, that's the wrong concept of love. Confessing your love does not mean that the other person suddenly owns you forever. When you claim to own someone, goes back to what I just said before. It's not only conceited and selfish, but toxic to any relationship. It doesn't mean that you're allowed to ever reconsider how you feel. Saying "I love you" doesn't mean that you're binding yourself to this person for the rest of your life. Unless you're getting married and promising to love each other forever, even that can be undone. And trust me, I've been there. You're not suddenly committed for life. You're just confessing your feelings. They might break your heart, but let them. Love is also a risk. You might not be reciprocated, or you might end up involved with someone who will eventually break your heart. But here's the thing. When you're in love, there's no foolproof method to preventing heartbreak. Or rather, you can choose to remain alone and out of love forever. That might do the trick. It's not just the best route for a fulfilling life. Falling in love and getting your heart broken is no one's preferred outcome. But it happens. It's part of being human. As I say on my shows over and over again, we are living a human experience. And we exist in this crazy, complicated thing we call life. And even if you take every conceivable measure to avoid pain and heartbreak, you're still going to be alive. So why not go for the full experience instead of isolating yourself in an emotional bubble wrap of your own making? We learn a lot from heartbreak, and they are all painful lessons. Trust me, they are all painful lessons. But you know what? They help us grow. So go ahead. Give someone the chance to break your heart. Let them. Love is not like your actual heart. You do have more than one. Our culture often mistakes offering love with giving your heart to somebody. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that is another wrong concept. Love is not about giving your heart away. Love is about opening room in your heart to let someone in. You're allowed to have more than one love in a lifetime, which is not argument against monogamy, but an argument for recovering from heartbreak and allowing yourself to find love again if you have to. Just because you've said I love you to someone doesn't mean you can't say it to a different person later. And just because some people only have one love in their entire whole life, they stay married for 50 plus years and are forever crazy about each other, that's great. And I congratulate those people. But these people had no idea their stories would turn out how they did from the start. Maybe they hoped it would, and they certainly worked for that outcome, but they didn't know. They took a chance, and it paid off. You won't know how your story will turn out unless you do too. And now that your fears are gone, go enjoy love. Give it freely. Embrace the possibility that you might fall on your face instead of letting that fear stop you from living. Saying I love you, however, is still a pretty big deal. Love is a deep, serious feeling, and it should be treated as such. But don't be creepy about it. Don't distribute it like it's candy corn on Halloween. Just be honest with yourself and validate your feelings and take a chance. But how do we understand love? Because it's not an easier concept to grasp. Between everything literature, Hollywood, and our culture tells us, it's no wonder why we feel often quite lost. I know I did when I thought I had everything figured out. Looking back, I see that my understanding of love has evolved through 4 different, very distinct changes or stages. The Hollywood love. I wanted that. The kiss in the rain from breakfast at Tiffany's. I wanted that. Spinning through Paris in a pretty dress in the arms of Fred Astaire like in Funny Face. I wanted that. Basically, I wanted my life to turn out like Audrey Hepburn when she acted in her movies. Come on. I believed in love to the point of losing reason. I believed in constant daydreaming and scribbling our names on notebooks and in writing love letters. That stage also coincided, as one would expect, with teenage years. High school offered fertile ground for classroom crushes and hallway passions. I believed myself in love every other week. The problem with it? Most of the girls in school were in love with the same few objects. And it took me a while to understand that that wasn't love. It was infatuation. But I suffered. Oh, how I suffered. I suffered like the heroine in a novel or the pretty starlet in a romantic flick. I suffered for being a part of a couple of star-crossed lovers, separated by the mean distance of a hallway, and the fact that he didn't even know my name. That kind of infatuation isn't a part of my emotional vocabulary anymore. I'm not immune to the effects of a handsome man, but I understand the difference between being incredibly attracted to someone and being in love, which is something my teenage self took her sweet time to figure out. And of course, in saying that, there are many people out there that are full-grown adults that still do that. The next stage, the love that completes you. The idea of finding a partner who completes us is as old as romance itself. The ancient biblical teaching that marriage turns man and woman into one in flesh and has been used to reinforce that notion. And Jerry Maguire. I had to say that. Now, the Bible itself doesn't specifically state that men and women are incomplete beings until they marry, but our logical brains quickly do the math. If we want the equation to equal 1, then we must be adding 2 halves. And Jerry Maguire says, "You complete me." But we shouldn't interpret the Bible or any text for that fact in that way. And we shouldn't also listen to Jerry Maguire. I thought that if I could find someone who would complete me, who would make me feel whole in a way I hadn't felt for most of my life. I even believed that whenever I was unhappy, it was because I hadn't found him yet. The one partner that would fill that hole inside and make me happy for once and all. Remember, if you are a guy listening to this, just change the gender text. Now just talk as a female because I am a female. Since I've learnt that no one can complete anyone, we need to be whole in ourselves to even have a shot at a good relationship in the first place. That, however, requires a lot of work. It requires taking the time to care for ourselves and enough self-reflection to identify what issues we need to address. It's not work you do once and you're done. It's ongoing, never ending, but it's worth it. And yet, most people, myself included, at least at some point in their lives, believed that they need a partner to complete them. For me, though, the next stage represented some improvement, although it wasn't yet the end of my journey of understanding love. The next stage, the love I can choose. If love isn't about infatuation or completing each other, then it must be about choosing each other. For a happy, long-lasting relationship, you must choose each other every day. The moment two people decide that they want to be together until death do they part. The second they promise they'll be there for each other and no matter what, come what may, that must be a beautiful moment. And it is. But there's so much more to it that I could comprehend as far as my mid-20s. When I reached my mid-20s, I thought that I had everything figured out by then. And if you want a lifelong love, I thought you must settle to at least to some degree. And after all, nobody's perfect and there's no real life Prince Charming. And at the time, I congratulated myself for having reached that conclusion. So I made a choice. I chose a seemingly good, smart, charming guy, and I brushed the red flags underneath the love takes work carpet, and I married him. The problem wasn't with the concept of choosing. The problem was believing that making a choice was all it took. The problem was that I idolized the choice. I believed it to be what I wanted it to be. In a way, it wasn't much different than the daydreaming of my high school years, or the belief that the chosen one would complete me and give my life meaning. Choosing each other is important, but unless you're on the same page about everything else, it's completely useless. And in my late 20s, I got divorced. And I learned the latest, best version of what love is supposed to be. And the last stage is mature love. I learned this lesson through a combination of 3 key circumstances. Identifying everything in my marriage that was lacking. Finding those elements in another much healthier relationship. And going through therapy for myself. Let me repeat that. Going to therapy for myself. I learned that mature love is about listening to each other. Really, really listening to each other. It's about having a lot of respect for each other. Enjoying each other's company, but not knowing how to spend time apart. But knowing about how to spend time apart and how to be your own person. But there will come a point in your relationship when the only thing left to say is, I love you. The 3 words that should move your relationship to the next level. At this point, you've already been through everything with your man or woman. They're nice, they're fun, they know all about your favorite foods and hangout spots. You talk daily. They tell you about their day, and you tell them about yours. And it seems like they are just unable to utter the words. Men, in particular, are not verbal creatures by nature. At least not as much as women. Women tend to express their love through actions and not words. A man will make you laugh, touch your hand, hug you, buy you things you like, take you places you fancy, all before thinking of admitting his love. Don't expect him to suddenly stand up and confess that you're the love of his life. Besides not being verbal or skilled enough to express love in words like women, there are other reasons that can make a man hesitate to say, I love you. The first one is the fear of losing her. This is the most common reason why most men hesitate to say, I love you. And most men who are borderlining between fear and actually saying, I love you, will actually write it, I love, spelt L-U-V, ya, Y-A. You probably noticed that when they text you, I love ya, not I love you. It's almost like friend zoning. But that's another story. It usually happens either due to lack of experience, or if he's been friends with a woman for a long time before he finally decides to say the words. But in these situations, a man has to be clear and honest about how he feels. I once advised a man to be straightforward about his feelings. And he told her, I know that this may ruin our friendship, but I have to tell you that I've been in love with you all my life. Despite the fact that he was right about ruining the friendship, and that he hated himself and this woman afterwards, you have to admire the guy's courage. Anyway, the second one is ego. Sometimes one's ego stands between him and admitting his feelings. The fear of being rejected and ruining his self-image usually stops a man from taking that step if he is not sure he will be welcomed by the other party. The next one is feeling weak. One of the main reasons why men don't admit their love is because sometimes they subconsciously translate this into weakness. To them, saying I love you may mean I am weak and I need you. And not everyone is okay with that. Next one is fear of expectations. Expectations are a major relationships killer. Sometimes men relate saying, I love you, to having to fulfill expectations that they are still not ready for. They associate it with having to commit and give more. Not all men are able to take this step, which leads them to refrain from saying, I love you. The next one is fear of failing again. And for those guys who are divorcees or are heartbroken men who have been traumatized by women, a man who has been in previous relationships that didn't end very well already suffers from a destroyed self-image and a hurt ego. For him to have another go and show his weaknesses in front of a new woman might not be a very tempting idea. And he will think of a million reasons before admitting his love to her and to himself. And when I mentioned about for those men who are divorcees who have been traumatized by a woman, don't forget, ladies, I've got your back. But you guys can do some damage too. Not just men, but you women too. I'm a woman. I know this. So I'm not going to sit there and stick up for women, because I know that they can be just as damaging as men. He's not sure about his feelings. Sometimes a man just enjoys the feeling of having a woman he likes around. He likes her company and tries to generally make her happy, but he's not sure if she's the one he wants to share the rest of his life with. And that's exactly why he's not ready to commit the words, and he chooses not to say them in order not to get himself into something he's not ready for. Mature love doesn't happen. You have to make it happen. You have to build it bit by bit every day. Mature love is built by mature people coming together and really cherishing each other, but mostly cherishing the opportunity of sharing life with everything that entails: the good, the bad, the boring. It took me a while to leave the daydreaming high school years behind, just as it took me a while to learn how to be my own person, and a whole one at that. And I will confess to you that I don't even think that I have it all figured out, but I do think I have made considerable progress, which is the best thing that somebody could ever say. It's almost as like saying, I know nothing, but I'm going to work on it. And I do believe that having mature love as a goal is much better and much healthier than any of the alternatives. But let's talk about the fear of love. The fear of love or falling in love is a phobia known as philophobia. The word originates from the Greek philos, which means loving or beloved. Individuals who suffer from this phobia fear romantic love or forming emotional attachments of any sort. As far as unusual phobias are concerned, philophobia certainly ranks one of the highest in any list. And often this phobia is known to have cultural or religious roots, where the person may have been committed to an arranged marriage and hence fears falling in love. This phobia is more common in women than men, and the condition can greatly affect one's life to an extent that it becomes difficult to commit or form healthy relationships. And such people tend to live their lives in solitude. And here's a fact for you. It is believed that England's Queen Elizabeth might have been a philophobic. She loved and allowed several suitors to court her, but things never came to marriage or commitment. And it's now known that historians now believe that her condition may have arisen owing to the fact that she had seen her mother, and Boleyn, we're talking about the Queen Mother here, as well as her cousin, executed for love. The fact that her own father was responsible for the execution might have made her believe that all romantic relationships have a tragic ending. But let's go back to mature love. That sounds a lot better. Why is mature love so hard to come by? Mostly because we're tricked into believing in all the wrong markers of love. We're tricked into believing real love is all about romance and grand gestures. And it's about strong, passionate feelings that move you into doing things you never saw yourself doing before. We believe real love is not only a thing, but is signified by a fixed set of attitudes and values. We believe real love makes you want to spend every waking second next to your significant other, that makes you jealous and deeply afraid that one misstep may cause you to lose the object of such passion. And that's when you trip, when you mistake passion for love. But real love, first of all, is not a thing. If real love were a thing, then it's logically opposite. Fake love would also be a thing. There is no real love because it's either love or it isn't. It's either love or it's passion, possessiveness, an ego boost, or any other unhealthy relationship not marked by trust, respect, or genuine giving. There's a palpable difference, however, between mature and immature love. And if you're thinking, which one do you have? I'm going to give you some markers so you can know the difference. The first marker: you're able to discuss anything and everything. As humans, it can be hard to talk about certain topics in a relationship conversation. Topics can range from what's with that coworker you're mad with, to the ex of your partners that you're still jealous of, from who should be doing the laundry this week, to why you're afraid you might die alone, why didn't your partner call to let you know they were late, and how come you didn't like their new haircut. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is just scratching the surface. Being able to calmly talk with someone about what's bothering you outside and inside the relationship is a precious gift. It goes beyond just being able to blurt out your unfiltered thoughts. In fact, it isn't even about blurting out anything. It's about feeling safe and accepted. It's about being individually mature enough to know how to articulate what troubles you, and mature enough as a couple to know how to listen to each other. It takes skill, it takes practice, but it's a wonderfully beautiful thing to achieve. Number 2, you respect each other's need for time alone. Mature love is about spending quality time together, but it's also about spending quality time apart. Being alone is an essential human need. Time spent with ourselves, whether in silent reflection or engrossed in healthy activities we enjoy, is time spent in self-improvement. Healthy and mature couples use their respective time alone to grow as individuals. They also take the time to miss each other so that they can gladly meet each other again as improved individuals who can truly appreciate each other's company. When couples manage to respect each other's need for time alone, neither being clingy or needy or demanding attention when the other can't give it, they know they have a mature love. Thirdly, you respect each other's need for personal space. Just as with personal times, personal space is a human necessity. Sure, mature couples can talk about anything and everything, but it doesn't mean they should be in each other's business all the time. Each person in a couple has their own time to process things, and each one knows which subjects they need to share, which subjects they need to keep to themselves. We all need a level of privacy, and that's valid for our things as well as for our personal issues. When couples are able to respect each other's personal space, the relationship grows stronger, because it means that anything that is shared voluntarily, and that makes all the difference. The fourth thing is you respect each other's need for having friends outside the couple. Having friends outside the couple does not mean that there's a lacking in the relationship. No single relationship, no matter how good and mature it is supposed to be enough for anyone. Human beings by nature are social creatures, and we're not supposed to rely on a single person to satisfy all our needs. And that's why our relationships with family, co-workers, friends, and significant others are shaped so differently. Because they are different relationships with different people. Each has its own dynamic. It's healthy for a couple to have individual friends outside of the relationship, to be able to go out to share experiences and come back renewed, loaded with stories to share. The fifth point is you have to have a lot of respect for each other. Respect more than communication is the basis for healthy relationships. Without respect, communication isn't even possible. When couples respect each other as individuals, they cultivate the patience and understanding. When respect is present, there is no longer a fear of how one might react when approached with a problem, a dilemma, or any dark issue. Where there's no respect, there's no maturity. Where there's no respect, there can be hardly any love. Number 6, you have that tranquility that comes with absolute trust. In mature love, trust is essential. Jealousy is a part of the human experience, but allowing yourself to be overcome by it is just plain weakness. When you cultivate respect and openness, you cultivate trust. When you know you can open up to each other on any issue, you eliminate doubt. And what's left is a blissful state of mind that only absolute trust can provide. There's a calm, there's tranquility, and there's a sense of safety, characteristic of mature love. And it's wonderful. And the last one, you focus on fulfilling your partner's needs and not your own. The reason why couples in mature relationships have an easy time respecting each other's need for personal space, for alone time, and for friends outside the couple is that they know that they will always come back to each other. They know that their time together is sacred. They know that if they don't nurture their relationship, it will wither and die. They understand that the purpose of the relationship is to fulfill their partner's needs before they seek to fulfill their own. Giving, not taking, is the purpose of a mature relationship. still there'll be obstacles. Having a mature relationship is no guarantee against the hardships of life. There will be disagreements. There will be hard times. But the difference in a mature relationship is how the couples deal with obstacles, with dialogue, and respect. If you recognize your relationship as a mature one, I applaud you. Congratulations. If you don't yet, don't worry. You can work your way there one step at a time. And for those that are having problems and they can't figure it out, I am a relationship therapist. You can always go to my website, send me an inquiry, ask me questions, and I'd be more than happy to talk to you or provide you services. That's what I'm here for. This is why I do my show every week. So consider this a partial therapy lesson. Learning. But how mature love handles adversity? How do we make sure our love stays on track when everything else is falling off the rails? In conversation, a fan recently wrote me this, and I quote, most relationship runs well then when things are going well. The question is, how good are you at doing all of the above when things aren't going well? Are you willing to do the work when there's job stress, parental illness, or loss, or some stupid activity by your mate, jealousy, or some other strain? Are you willing to say the same thing to so many people find hard to do? Say, I'm sorry, I was wrong. Are you willing to forget that thing? The one thing that you think happened a long time ago that you've let fester. If you can answer yes to all the above, you're on your way. Now, that conversation made me realize that I needed to address the subject of how mature love handles adversity. So I'm going to tell you. When the foundations of mature love are solid enough that you don't need much else to deal with adversity, all you have to do is go back to the basics. The base of mature love is formed by respect and trust, and we just mentioned that. If those values are in place, you'll find that you can face anything. Facing problems head on is the first step to overcoming them, and that requires a lot of honesty and open dialogue. If you trust your partner, you're able to not only be open with them about your problems, but also have confidence on their judgment in moments of crisis. Communication is important, but being willing to listen is essential. And in my late teens, after I divorced my husband, I found out that he really didn't listen to the things I said back when we were married. And yet he kept accusing me of not communicating properly. There's no communicating properly with someone who's unwilling to listen. Listening means that you're willing to let go of your prejudice. It means that you're open to new opinions, not locked into a conclusion you arrived on your own, exclusively based on your own perceptions. It means you're open to the possibility that you might be wrong, or that you might not be considering all sides of the story. Forgiving is forgetting. Are you willing to forget that thing? That one thing you think happened a long time ago, that you've let fester? If you apply the forgiven but not forgotten rule to your relationship, then you have a sad relationship. If you have one at all. If true forgiveness means to let go. It means you don't bring it up again in the middle of an argument 3 years after it happens. It means that you've let time and love truly heal the wounds of your heart. That's not an excuse. It's not to excuse a hurtful partner. In a loving relationship, the obvious goal is to never hurt each other. But even with the best intentions, it still might happen. And when it does, you have to forgive genuinely and let go for good. By finding the balance in compromise. Let me ask you this question. Are you willing to say the things so many people find so hard to do? Say, I'm sorry, I was wrong. In mature love, there's a lot of compromise. However, even in compromise, there needs to be balance. If one person finds him or herself compromising about 90% of the time, then there's something fundamentally wrong going on in the relationship. Love has a lot to do with self-sacrifice, but no love thrives exclusively on self-denial. The same goes for admitting you're wrong and saying you're sorry. You'll find yourself saying it so many times throughout your life, but if you're the only one doing it in the context of a relationship, there's a chance that your relationship is a toxic one, or even an abusive one. Let me say this, only narcissists are right 100% of the time. And if your partner never apologizes and instead makes you always be the one to say, I'm sorry, he or she probably fits the bill. In mature love, both parties compromise occasionally, making sure there's a balance and that no partner ends up being manipulated by another. Even or perhaps especially in a couple, we should always maintain our autonomy and sense of personal identity. So check your behavior, admit when you're wrong, but make sure you're never the only one doing it. Otherwise, it's not a healthy one. It's not a healthy relationship, it's a manipulative one. And when everything else around you seems to be going off the rails, you have to rely on each other. But you should know it's not your partner's responsibility to deal with your problems. Your problems are still your own to handle. Still knowing that you have someone you can lean on to help shoulder your burden is one of the best parts of a relationship. The secret to find support on each other without expecting the other person to fix all of your problems for you. And sometimes they'll lend you a big hand, and sometimes they won't be able to do more than just offer a sympathetic ear. But knowing that they're there does make all the difference. Make sure that they know that you're there for them too. It's a two-way street. Never take your problems on your partner. Knowing how to keep outside problems at the door when you come home is a sign of maturity. It is not because your boss yelled at you and that you're about to go home and yell at your partner, because it's not because someone T-boned your car and that you're about to make your partner feel guilty for not having done the dishes, or some minor thing, or something to do with the kids. There's a myriad of situations. Outside problems need to be let in gently. Like a vampire, they need to be invited in when the moment is right, when you and your partner are ready to fend it off with a heap of garlic and stab it through the heart with a wooden stake. In other words, you should let your partner know of your outside problems so that they can help you. But you should never let these problems interfere in your relationships, especially if your partner has no direct connection or responsibility over the issue. And in the end, it's all about 3 core concepts. Take ownership of your problems. Your partner is there to support you, not to make your problems disappear. Listen to your partner. It's the only way you can find out how to support them when they need you the most. And nurture your trust in and your respect for your partner. It allows you to have the confidence in your partner's better judgment. And if you make sure all of these 3 things are present in your relationship, your love will thrive over any and all adversity that may come your way. But let's switch gears for a second. What about for those people who have been through abusive relationships, who didn't realize that they were in an abusive relationship until they left? You'll find that the warning signs get blurry when you have low self-esteem. And a therapist once told me, "From what you're telling me, I think he might have a narcissistic personality." I knew I had to leave I left my marriage for a reason. My mental health was going down the drain, but I didn't realize how bad things were until I'd stepped away and was able to look at it with some perspective. And I guess a part of me felt guilty for leaving for being the one who gave up. I knew my husband had his shortcomings, of course, but I still felt like I was supposed to have made it work. Leaving even if to persevere my own sanity meant that I was the weak one, the selfish one. And as I began to understand how my husband's personality meant that he was an emotional abusive partner, all of those assumptions about the extent of my own failures fell apart one by one. As far as the abusive relationship goes, mine was a light one. But sadly, a lot of people have had it worse. But still, I went through quite a few things that definitely didn't fit to a box of normal relationship. The first one, spontaneously bursting into tears in public, wasn't normal. Giving up on having my own memories because my husband would always remember things better anyway wasn't normal. Explaining myself a dozen times over only to later hear that I didn't communicate properly or I wasn't listening wasn't normal. Having an anxiety attack in the middle of a discussion with my husband is not normal. Darlene Onuit said, and I quote, "Controllers, abusers, and manipulative people don't question themselves. They don't ask themselves if the problem is them. They always say that the problem is someone else." And working with a therapist can help you realize that you're not insensitive, you're not unreasonable, and you're not crazy. Your feelings and your perceptions have value, and they aren't wrong, despite the many times you can be made feel that the opposite is true. And when you ask for them to change their behavior, they always come back at you and say that you're being too demanding or you're overreacting. And whenever you talk about issues in marriage, you are always the one at fault. And you are always the person that is made to prove themselves, the one to grow up. Abigail Brenner from Psychology Today quoted, "Manipulative people either lack insight into how they engage others and create certain scenarios, or they believe truly that their way of handling a situation is the only way because it means that their needs are being met, and that's all that matters. Ultimately, all situations and relationships are about them, and what others think and feel doesn't really matter." In saying that, they're definitely lacking insight of how they engage with others, especially with me. And it's not that it's done on purpose. And everything comes, as always, from a place of truly believing that they are a good person. But the perception of what is right and good always centers about themselves. And they are just incapable of understanding how their way of perceiving life could cause another person pain, since it works so well for them fulfilling their own needs, when they don't realize that it causes a lot of pain. Now, I'm going to talk about gaslighting. While I try to be careful with the term gaslighting, there's no way to avoid using it when I look back on what I've been through. Inside the parallel reality, you can go from having an excellent memory to being the one who actually the only one who remembered things. And whenever you think you've told them something, even if they didn't remember it, then I hadn't said anything about it. Whatever I said didn't exist. And whenever something happens in a certain way, and you remember it differently, you're always wrong. And you get to a point where you question your own memory. But it's normal to misremember things. It isn't normal to completely stop trusting your memory when you're a healthy 26-year-old. And so what happens is you start to doubt yourself. And you have low self-esteem, and the burning desire to make the marriage work contributed to make me go along with it. And you just go along to get along, and you end up saying that they're right. Just to protect your own sanity. Abigail Brenner from Psychology Today says, "Regularly examine what you believe. We won't do this enough. As life progresses, our beliefs and attitudes may change, and we need to know how these changing ideas affects us. When We are not sure what we believe. It's all too easy to allow someone else who is sure that their beliefs are right, not only for them, but for you as well, to attempt to manipulate your thinking. It wasn't until I stopped to examine what I believed I started to break the spell. It's hard to pin down when and how it happened, but it's like a light bulb goes on inside your mind. And you're like, well, wait a minute, I have thoughts and memories too, and they're not always wrong. And I know if it wasn't for the support of my family and friends and the help of the therapist, I might still be stuck in that relationship, trying to do everything their way, trying to fit the vision of who I was supposed to be, and believing my memory was good for nothing. And then comes the communication issues. You would get into these arguments that last up to 3 or 4 hours, and it would inevitably get to a point where we would have to reach full circle, each of us repeating our arguments for the 3rd and 4th time. Physically and emotionally, mentally exhausted. You asked to drop it because you're clearly getting nowhere. And would it be so bad if we agreed to disagree and move on? But when these communication issues arrive, you can't. And your partner does not let go. They hold you to it. And then when you do get to talk it out, they accuse you of never wanting to solve anything. And then you start to question yourself. What's solving it to you? Is it me agreeing with you because I don't? Is it you agreeing with me? It doesn't seem like you're going to, so what does solving even mean? And the majority of the time, they never have an answer. But yet they persist in wanting to keep the discussion going. It's far past the point where you can't take it no more. And you are always blamed for being the bad one for never wanting to solve anything, because you're already wrong in the first place. And eventually what happens is you begin to swallow your thoughts and just agree with them. Or you offer a compromise early on in the discussion in hopes of avoiding the emotional distress of getting into a full-blown argument. You aren't listened to or understood, and you just keep on making compromises and yielding to the point of view of the other person. Then your speech gets shaped by them, and then they would say that you don't communicate properly or you're not listening. And it's like walking on eggshells. You have to choose your words more carefully. Speak in a manner that isn't natural. But what helped was to walk away. After we got divorced, I moved on. We spoke on the phone a couple of times. There were a few things that I needed to feel straightened out, so I called him. We talked about what went wrong in our marriage, and I told him a few of the expectations and dreams I had going on, and things that I had repeated to him 100 times over the years. And eventually he said, "Ah," as if it had suddenly dawned on him, and he finally understood. It was clear to me that he was actually listening to me for the first time. I could tell by his tone and by how he was breathing, and by the moments he was silent. He sounded like he was hearing all of that for the first time, and even though I had told him the exact same things about 100 times before, like an actress reciting from a script, it took me leaving him to finally listen. Abigail Brenner, again from Psychology Today, says, and I quote, "Never waste your time in trying to explain who you are to people, or who you are committed to misunderstanding you. If someone doesn't get you, don't hang around waiting until they do. Don't make it your mission to get them to understand and like you. They're not interested in you as a person." And it takes a while to see the erasing of memory and the undermining of thoughts, which is two of the most significant issues from what was an incredibly toxic relationship. Low self-esteem contributed to make me stick around for as long as I did, because if I let the opinions have more weight than my own, it was partly because I did think my perceptions had less value. But let me tell you, narcissism and low self-esteem were the recipe for perfect storm. And it may have taken a while, but eventually I did see the light. I got tired of all the anxiety and despair. I stopped making excuses, and I started to notice how I was treated. Characterize people by their actions, and you'll never be fooled by their words. Always remember that what a person thinks, what says and does are two very different separate things. Observe someone closely without making excuses for them. Usually what you see is what you get. And I got out just in time. I could have left earlier. I could have tried a little bit longer. But in the end, I left just when I had to. In time to seek a better life. In time to find myself. Be myself. Express myself as freely as I'd like to do. And in this, freedom is all that matters. And of course, I got married young. And after almost just over 9 years of that relationship, I ended it. I walked out. I couldn't handle it no more. I'm using myself as an example to help you understand. But going back to the fear of love phobia. Philophobia, going back to philophobia, is an unwarranted and irrational fear of falling in love. And sometimes the sufferer does not fall in love because an intense emotional turmoil in his or her mind, but there are many theories about why this could happen. And some therapists believe that an intensely negative experience in the sufferer's past may have triggered a reaction. Parents' divorce, watching them fight or separate, or witnessing domestic violence in one's childhood might be responsible for this phobia. And as I've stated before, many cultures and religions prohibit romantic love or term relationships between man and woman as illicit under certain circumstances. And this can cause intense panic in the mind of the sufferer that since he or she firmly believes incurring the wrath of elders, society, or God if he or she has feelings or thoughts about love. The fear of commitment is due to a few failed relationships, constant negative thoughts, anxiety, and panic disorders that are linked to this phobia. People who are overly anxious or high-strung might be more prone to it. And the nature, extent, and causes of philophobia all vary from case to case, and sometimes it is a very real mystery as to why it may have occurred in the first place. We're going to take a break, And you are listening to Somafusion Radio with your host, Katie Kamara, on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network. For more information, please look me up on social media or go to my website, soma-fusion.com or somafusionmedia.com. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share out this show and let the whole world know what we're learning each week. Invite them to listen to us, listen with us. And when we come back, we'll be talking a lot more about love. And we're going much deeper into romantic love and why it kind of sucks. I'm going to give you a little history about it. So stay tuned. We'll be back in a few.
Took my love, took it down. I climbed a mountain and I turned around, and I saw my reflection in snow-covered hills, till the landslide brought me down. Oh, mirror in the sky, what is love? Can the child within my heart rise above? Can I sail through the changing ocean tides? Can I handle the seasons of my life? Time makes you bolder, even children get older, and I'm getting older too. In the snow-covered hills, where the landslide will bring it down. And if you see my reflection in the snow-covered hills, well, the landslide will bring it down. Oh, the landslide will bring it down.
Your music to my eyes, I had to listen just to find you. I'd like for you to let me sing along, give you a rhythm you feel. I wanna learn your every line, I wanna fill your empty spaces. I want to play the part to reach your heart, sing you a song that you feel. Whoa. mine. Sing while I harmonize. Let your melodies fly in my direction. Take me to your paradise on a musical ride. I'm in love with your music, baby. Your music to my eyes.
Your voice is quite a view. I heard a song and then I saw you. I learned the lyrics and knew you were mine. Danced the horizon with you. I wanna sing you a sunrise. Touch me and play what you feel.
Love, let your music be mine. Sing while I harmonize. Let your melodies fly in my direction. Take me to your paradise on a musical ride. I'm in love with your music, baby. Your music to my eyes.
And you are listening to Somafusion Radio with your host Katie Kamara, and the topic tonight is P.S. I Love You, and we are going to be talking about a brief history of romantic love and why it kind of sucks. Now guys, if you are listening right now, we are going to get a little deep and rawly, bluntly honest about romantic love and why it kind of sucks. So you will hear from now on a level of, where it's that time of the night where you hear a level of profanity, so just be aware. If you don't like it, then you are going to be turned off by it, but that's okay. We are human, and this is the kind of language that we have. So how romantic love came to be a cultural centerpiece in Western societies, and why it kind of screws us all up. Now first, I'm going to give you a few facts so that you can understand where I'm coming from. The first fact is, at some point during evolution between plankton and Bon Jovi, apes evolved the ability to become emotionally attached to one another. This emotional attachment would eventually come to be known as love, and the evolution would one day produce a bevy of singers from New Jersey who would make millions of writing cheesy songs about it. Okay? Second fact, humans evolved the ability to become attached to each other, and that is the ability to love each other, because it helped us survive. This isn't exactly romantic or sexy, but it is true. We didn't evolve big fangs or huge claws or insane gorilla strength. Instead, we evolved the ability to emotionally bond into communities and families where we became largely inclined to cooperate with one another. These communities and families turned out to be far more effective than any claw or any fang. Humanity soon dominated the planet. The third fact, as humans, we instinctively develop loyalty and affection for those who show us the most loyalty and affection. This is all love really is. An irrational degree of loyalty and affection for another person, to the point that we'd come to harm or even die for that person. It may sound insane, but these symbolic warm fuzzies that kept the species relying on one another long enough to survive the savannas and populate the planet and invent Netflix. The fourth fact, let's all take a moment and think about the evolution for Netflix. Any takers? Fifth fact, the ancient Greek philosopher Plato argued that the highest form of love was actually this non-sexual, non-romantic form of attachment to another person. This so-called brotherly love, Plato reasoned correctly that since passion and romance and sex often make us do ridiculous things that we regret, this sort of passionless love between two family members or between two close friends was the height of virtuous human experience. In fact, Plato, like most people in the ancient world, looked upon romantic love with skepticism, if not absolute horror. Sixth fact, as with most things, Plato got it right before anybody else did. And this is why non-sexual love is often referred to as platonic love. Seventh fact, for most of human history, romantic love was looked upon as kind of a sickness. And if you think about it, it's not hard to figure out why romantic love causes people, especially in young people, to do some stupid shit. Trust me. One time when I was 21, I skipped class, bought a bus ticket, rode across 3 states just to surprise somebody that I was in love with. They freaked out, and as soon as I was back on a bus heading home, just as single as when I came. What an idiot. But that bus ride seemed like a great idea at the time because it seemed like such a romantic idea. And my emotions were going crazy at the time, and I was lost in a fantasy world and loving it. But now it's just such a short of an embarrassing thing that I did back when I was young and dumb and didn't know any better. We've all done it. And this sort of poor decision making that made the ancients skeptical about romantic love's utility. Instead, many cultures treats it as some sort of unfortunate disease we all have to go through and get over in our lives, kind of like chickenpox. In fact, classic stories like the Iliad or Romeo and Juliet weren't celebrations of love. They were warnings against the potential negative consequences of love and of how romantic love can potentially ruin everything. See, for the most of human history, people didn't marry because of their feelings for one another. Feelings didn't matter in the ancient world. Why? Because fuck feelings. There are fields to plow and cows to feed, and holy crap, Attila the Hun just massacred your entire extended family the next village over. Because there was no time for romance, and certainly no tolerance for the risky behaviors it encouraged among most people. There was too much life or death or work to be accomplished. Marriage was meant for baby making and sound finances. Romantic love, if permitted at all, was reserved for the heady realm of mistresses and fuckboys. For the most part of human history, for the majority of humanity, their sustenance and survival hung by a tiny thread. People had shorter life expectancies than my mother's cat. Everything you did had to be done for the simple sake of survival. Marriages were arranged by families not because they liked each other, and especially not because they loved each other, but because their farms went together nicely and the families could share some wheat or some barley when the next flood or drought hit. Marriages was purely an economic arrangement designed to promote the survival and prosperity of both extended families. So if Junior gets the tingles in his pants and wants to run away with the milkmaid across town, this wasn't just an inconvenience, this was a legitimate threat to the community's survival. And it was treated as such. In fact, this kind of behavior was so treacherous in young men that most ancient societies cut a lot of young boys' balls off so they wouldn't have to deal with their philandering. And this had a side benefit of producing excellent sounding choir boys. But it wasn't until the industrial age that things began to change. People began to take up work in city centres and factories. Their income and thus their economic future became untied to the land, and they were able to make money independent from their family. They didn't have to rely on inheritances or family connections the way that people did in the ancient world. And so the economic and political components of marriage ceased to make much sense. The new economic realities of the 19th century then cross-pollinated with the ideas that emerged from the Enlightenment about individual rights and the pursuit of happiness. And the result was full-blown age of romanticism. Fuck the cattle, it was the 1800s and people's feelings suddenly mattered. The new ideal was not only to marry for love, but that the love was to live on in bliss for all of eternity. And thus it wasn't until the relatively recent 150 years ago that the ever popular happily ever after ideal was born. Then in the 20th century rolled out. And in between Hitler and a few genocides, Hollywood and ad agencies grabbed hold of the happily ever after fantasy and beat it to death over the next 100 years. The point here is that romance and all of the weight we tend to put it on is a modern invention, and primarily promoted and marketed by a bunch of businessmen who realized that it would get you to pay for movie tickets and or a piece of new jewelry. As Don Draper once said, what you call love was invented by guys like me to sell nylons. Romance is an easy sell. We all enjoy the hero get the girl. We all enjoy seeing the happy ending. We all enjoy believing happily ever after. It feels good. And so the commercial forces that arose in the 20th century took it and ran with it. But romantic love and love in general is far more complicated than we have been led to believe by Hollywood movies and jewelry store ads. Nowhere do we hear that love can be unsexy drudgery, or that love can sometimes be unpleasant or even painful. That it could potentially even be something we don't want to feel at times. Or that love requires self-discipline and a certain amount of sustained effort over the course of years, decades, or even a lifetime. And these truths are not exciting, nor do they sell well. The painful truth about love is that the real work of relationships begin after the curtain closes and the credits roll. The real work of a relationship is all the boring, drudgery, unsexy things that nobody else sees or appreciates. Like most things in the media, the portrayal of love in pop culture is limited to the highlight reel. All the nuance and complexities of actual living through a relationship is swept away to make room for the exciting headline, the unjust separation, the crazy plot twist, and, of course, everyone's favorite happy ending. Most of us have been so inundated by these messages throughout our entire lives that we have come to mistake the excitement and the drama of romance for the whole relationship itself. When we're swept up by romance, we can't imagine anything could possibly go wrong between us and our partner. We can't see their faults, their failures. All we see is their limitless potential and possibility. This is not love. It's a delusion. And like most delusions, things usually don't end well. Which brings me to the 8th fact. Just because you love somebody doesn't mean you should be with them. It's possible to fall in love with somebody who doesn't treat us well, who makes us feel worse about ourselves, who doesn't hold the same respect for us as we do for them, or who has such a dysfunctional life themselves that they threaten to pull us underwater and drown us with them. It's possible to fall in love with somebody who doesn't treat us well, who makes us feel worse about ourselves, who doesn't hold the same respect for us as we do for them. It's possible to fall in love with somebody who has different ambitions or life goals that are contradictory to our own, who holds different philosophical beliefs or worldviews, or whose path is merely weaves in the opposite direction at an inopportune time. It's possible to fall in love with someone who sucks for us and our happiness. And this is why throughout most of human history, marriage was arranged by the parents, because they were the ones with some objective perspective on whether their kid was marrying a fuckface or not. I'm sorry to say it that way, but it is. But in the past few centuries, since young people were able to choose their partners themselves, which is a good thing, we mentioned that at the start of the show, they instinctively overestimated love's ability to overcome whatever issues or problems were presented in their relationships, which is a bad thing. This definition of toxic or unhealthy relationship, people who don't love each other for the person they are, but rather love each other in the hopes that their feelings with each other will fill some horribly empty hole in their soul. Here's the ninth fact. With greater personal freedom comes a greater requirement for personal responsibility and understanding. And it's 100 years later, and we're just now gaining the ability to grapple with the responsibilities love brings with it. People in toxic relationships don't love each other. They love the idea of each other. They're in love with the fantasy that is constantly playing out in their head. And instead of ditching the fantasy and getting with the person in front of them, they spend all of their will and energy interpreting and conforming the person in front of them to fit the fantasy they keep spinning for themselves. And why? Because they don't know any better. Or they're afraid of the vulnerability required to love somebody selflessly and healthily. A few centuries ago, people hated romantic love. They were afraid of it, skeptical of its power, and weary of its ability to tilt everyone it touched into making bad choices. A couple of centuries ago, free from the confines of a farm and a mom and a dad approving or disapproving hand, people then overestimated love. They idolized it and willed it to wash away all of their problems and pain forever. But people are just now starting to figure out that while love is great, that by itself, love is not enough. That love should not be the cause of relationships, but rather their effect. That love should not define our lives, but rather be a byproduct of it. That just because someone makes you feel more alive doesn't mean that you should necessarily live for them. Nobody talks about the fact that greater personal freedom grants greater opportunities to fuck things up. And it creates greater opportunities to hurt other people. The great liberation of romantic love has brought incredible life experiences into the world. But it's also brought the necessity for a realistic, honest approach to relationships that accommodates the painful realities of spending a life together. Some people say in this age of ghosting and swipe right and romance is dead. Romance isn't dead. It's merely being postponed, relegated to a safe space where both people need to build a certain degree of comfort and trust before they go bleeding heart bonkers for one another. And perhaps it's actually a good thing. but all you need is love. In 1967, John Lennon wrote a song called All You Need Is Love. He also beat both of his wives, abandoned one of his children, verbally abused his gay Jewish manager with homophobic and anti-Semitic slurs, and once a camera crew film lying naked. Once had a camera crew film him lying naked in his bed for an entire day. 35 years later, Trent Reznor from 9 Inch Nails wrote a song called Love Is Not Enough. Reznor, despite being famous for all his shocking stage performances and his grotesque and disturbing videos, got clean from all of his drugs and alcohol, married one woman, had 2 children with her, and then cancelled entire albums and tours so that he could stay home and be a good husband and a father. One of these 2 men had a clear and realistic understanding of love. One of them did not. One of these men idolized love as a solution to all his problems. One of them did not. One of these men was probably a narcissistic asshole. One of them was not. In our culture, many of us idolize love. We see it as some lofty cure-all for all of life's problems. Our movies, our stories, and our history all celebrate it as life's ultimate goal, the final solution for all of our pain and struggle. And because we idolize love, we overestimate it. And as a result, our relationships pay a hefty price. When we believe that all we need is love, then, like John Lennon said, we're more likely to ignore fundamental values such as respect, humility, and commitment towards the people we care about. After all, if love solves everything, then why bother with it with all the other stuff? All of the hard stuff. But if, like Reznor, we believe love is not enough, then we understand that healthy relationships require more than pure emotion or lofty passions. We understand that there are things more important in our lives and our relationships than being in love. And success of our relationships hinges on those deeper and more important values. But let me tell you about the harsh truths about love. The problem with idolizing love that it causes us to develop unrealistic expectations about what love really is and what it can do for us. These unrealistic expectations then sabotage the very relationships we hold dear in the first place. And let me allow me to illustrate this. Love does not equal compatibility. Just because you fall in love with somebody doesn't mean necessarily that they're a good partner for you to be with over the long term. Love is an emotional process. Compatibility is a logical process. And the two don't bleed into one another very well. It's possible to fall in love with somebody who doesn't treat us well, who makes us feel worse about ourselves, who doesn't hold the same respect for us as we do for them, who has such a dysfunctional life themselves that they threaten to bring us down with them. It's possible to fall in love with somebody who has different ambitions, whose life goals that are contradictory to our own, who holds different philosophical beliefs or worldviews that clash with our own sense of reality. It's possible to fall in love with somebody who sucks for us and our happiness. And that may sound paradoxical, but it's true. When we think of all the disastrous relationships I've seen or people have told me about, or most of them entered into on the basis of emotion, they felt that spark. And so they just dove in head first. Forget that he was a born-again Christian alcoholic and she was an acid-dropping bisexual necrophiliac. It just felt right. And then 6 months later, when she's throwing his shit out onto the lawn and he's praying to Jesus 12 times a day for her salvation, they look around and wonder, gee, where did it all go wrong? The truth is, it went wrong before it even began. When dating and looking for a partner, you must not only use your heart, but your mind. Yes, you want to find someone who makes your heart flutter and your farts smell like cherry popsicles. But you also need to evaluate a person's value and how they treat themselves. How they treat those close to them, their ambitions, their worldviews in general. Because if you fall in love with someone who is incompatible with you, well, as the ski instructor from South Park once said, you're gonna have a bad time. Love does not solve your relationship problems. Let me give you an example. My first boyfriend and I were madly in love with each other. We also lived in different cities. We had no money to see each other. We had families who hated each other. And we went through weekly bouts of meaningless drama and fighting. And every time we fought, we'd come back to each other next day and make up and remind each other how crazy we were about one another. And those little things matter because we're, oh my God, so in love. And we'll find a way to work things out and everything will be great. Just you wait and see. Our love made us feel like we were overcoming our issues, when on a practical level, absolutely nothing changed. As you can imagine, none of our problems were getting resolved. The fights repeated themselves, the arguments got worse, the inability to ever see each other hung around our necks like an albatross. We were both self-absorbed to the point where we couldn't even communicate that effectively. Hours and hours talking with nothing actually said. Looking back, there was no hope that it was ever going to last. But after all, love conquers all, right? Unsurprisingly, that relationship burst into flames and crashed like the Hindenburg into an oil patch. The breakup was ugly. The big lesson I took away from this is, while love makes you feel better about your relationship problems, it doesn't actually solve any of your relationship problems. And this is how toxic relationships work. The roller coaster of emotions are intoxicating, and each high feeling even more important and more valid than the one before. But unless there's a stable and practical foundation beneath your feet, that rising tide of emotion will eventually come and wash it all away. But love is not always worth sacrificing yourself. One of the defining characteristics of loving someone is that you are able to think outside of yourself and your own needs to help care for another person and their needs as well. But the question is that it doesn't get asked very often is exactly what are you sacrificing, and is it worth it? In loving relationships, it's normal for both people to occasionally sacrifice their own desires, their own needs, their own time for one another. I would argue that this is normal and healthy and a big part of what makes a relationship so great. But when it comes to sacrificing one's self-respect, one's dignity, one's physical body, one's ambitions, one's life purpose, just to be with somebody, then that same love becomes problematic. A loving relationship is supposed to supplement our individual identity, not damage it or replace it. And if we find ourselves in situations where we're tolerating disrespectful or abusive behavior, then that's essentially what we're doing. We're allowing our love to consume us and negate us, and if we're not careful, it will leave us as a shell of a person we once were. But let me talk about the friendship test. One of the oldest pieces of relationship advice in the book is, you and your partner should be best friends. Most people look at that piece of advice in the positive. I should spend time with my partner like I do my best friend. I should communicate openly with my partner like I do my best friend. I should have fun with my partner like I do with my best friend. But people should always also look at it in the negative. Would you tolerate your partner's negative behaviors in your best friend? Amazingly, when we asked ourselves this question, honestly, and I emphasize honestly here, in most unhealthy and codependent relationships, the answer is no. I know a young woman who just got married. She was madly in love with her husband, despite the fact that he had been between jobs for more than a year, showed no interest in planning the wedding, often ditched her to take surfing trips with his friends, and her friends and family raised a not so subtle concern about him. She happily married him anyway. But once the emotional high of the wedding wore off, reality set in. A year into their marriage, he's still between jobs. He trashes the house while she's at work. If she gets angry, he gets angry if she doesn't cook dinner for him. And anytime she complains, he tells her that she's spoilt and arrogant and crazy, and you're complaining. Oh, and he still ditches her to take surfing trips with his friends. And she got into the situation because she ignored the three of the harsh truths of love. She idolized love. Despite being slapped in the face by all the red flags he raised while dating him, she believed that their love signaled relationship compatibility when it didn't. When her friends and family raised concerns leading up to the wedding, she believed that their love would solve problems eventually. It didn't. And now everything had fallen into a steaming shit heap. She approached her friends for advice on how she could sacrifice herself even more to make it work. But the truth is, it won't. But why do we tolerate behaviors in romantic relationships when we would never, ever, ever tolerate it in our friendships? Imagine if your best friend moved in with you, trashed your place, refused to get a job or pay the rent, demanded you to cook dinner for them, and got angry and yelled at you every single time you complained. That friendship would be over faster than Paris Hilton's acting career. Or another situation, a man's girlfriend who was so jealous that she demanded passwords to all of his accounts and insisted on accompanying him on his business trips to make sure that he wasn't tempted by another woman. This woman was like the NSA. His life was practically under 24/7 surveillance, and you couldn't see it wearing on his self-esteem. His self-worth dropped to nothing. She couldn't trust him to do anything. And so he quit trusting himself to do anything. Yet he stays with her because he's in love. Remember this. The only way you can fully enjoy the love in your life is to choose to make something else more important in your life than love. You can fall in love with a wide variety of people throughout the course of your life. And you can fall in love with people who are good for you and people who are bad for you. You can fall in love with people in healthy ways and unhealthy ways. You can fall in love with people when you're young and when you're old. Love is not unique. Love is not special. And love is definitely not scarce. But your self-respect is, and so is your dignity, and so is your ability to trust. There can potentially be more or many loves throughout your life. But once you lose your self-respect, your dignity, your ability to trust, they are very hard to get back. Love is a wonderful experience. It's one of the greatest experiences life has to offer. and it is something everyone should aspire to feel and enjoy. But like any other experience, it can be healthy or unhealthy. Like any other experience, it cannot be allowed to define us, our identities, or our life purpose. We cannot let it consume us. We cannot sacrifice our identities and self-worth to it. Because the moment we do that, we lose love and we lose ourselves. Because you need more in life than love. Love is great. Love is necessary. Love is beautiful. But love is not enough. I don't know if you guys out there have heard the 3 love theory, the different types of love that are not experienced equally, that each can make or break a relationship. And my favorite model for relationship comes from the work of anthropologist Helen Fisher. She's dedicated decades of her life and her career to studying and understanding love, intimacy, and relationships. And I'll cover the 3 loves theory. It's a theory that I find incredibly helpful for understanding relationships. The premise of the 3 loves theory is that not all love experience is experienced equally. Anyone with a fair amount of romantic sexual experience could tell you that love and passion come in different flavors. With some people, it's intense and furious. With others, it's mellow and sensitive. With some, it's tumultuous with a lot of ups and downs. With others, it's slow and consistent over a long period of time. But this isn't just theorizing. Scientists like Fisher have studied the cognitive and neurobiological processes underlying attraction and love, and they've begun to pinpoint different emotions that occur at different stages of romantic relationships. And through these studies, Fisher was able to map the neurobiological components of each love experience and then match them to the real world social realities. The 3 loves that she came up with are lust, passion, and commitment. These 3 loves occur in different parts of the brain, occur independently from each other, and for instance, you can be in lust with somebody but have no perceived commitment to them, i.e. one-night stands. But before we get into that, let's cover what 3 loves really are specifically. The first love is lust. Lust is just a feeling that anyone should be able to relate to very, very easily. It comes from the reptilian brain and is pure instinctual reproduction. Lust is a yes or no proposition. Basically, do you want to have sex with this person at this particular moment? It's instantaneous and it based on pretty straightforward physical and behavioral components of attraction. Lust can also leave just as quickly as it comes. It's transitory and shifts constantly within a person. There's no attachment or favoritism. It's really simple as, do I want to fuck him or her right now? Yes or no? Love number 2. Passion. Passion is the emotional connection that occurs between 2 people. It's rooted in the mammalian brain. 2 people in passion are considered smitten. They stare at each other. They want to spend every hour of the day together, stay up until 6 a.m. together talking. Think newlyweds and honeymoons. Think romantic getaways. Think Romeo and Juliet. Passion is created by having a high degree of emotional chemistry as well as cultivating a sense of newness or spontaneity within a relationship. Hence, old married couples who plan romantic getaways to rekindle their passion in their relationship. Passion has an incredible power to override a person's logical functioning. It often coerces us into making less than stellar statements and commitments. It's the boyfriend who says he loves his new girlfriend and then 4 months later changes his mind. It's the girl who dreams for a year of moving in with her boyfriend, and then as soon as she does, she realizes she doesn't love him as much as she thought. It causes to get us caught up in the moment and project an endless utopian future for their relationship. Passion cannot be cultivated without lust. Although a couple can remain passionate with one another, after the lust disappears and think again as an older married couple, passion's death is wrought by a lack of shared experience and a lack of newness. Once a couple hits the point after 6 to 12 months of together with the newness of the other person, the newness of the other person starts to wear off. A serious test of their compatibility would arise. If that couple can merge their lives together in such a way that they continuously share their new experiences with one another, then passion will continue. If not, then it will eventually fall by the wayside. Which brings us to the third and final love: commitment. If two people remain in passion for long enough and there is a long-term compatibility where they can continue to share new life experiences together indefinitely, then commitment will arise. Commitment is an unbelievable, powerful feeling that occurs rarely in life. Commitment is when the passion of love 2 persists to the point that it's unconditional. Couples that are in love 2 and not love 3 will often feel great until something happens, like he loses his job, she has a miscarriage, he starts drinking, etc. Commitment is when you emotionally accept and love the other person's flaws just as much as their strengths. And scientists have actually shown that for couples who reach that level of commitment, their senses of self-actualization merge with the other person. When they observe neural activation patterns in these people, if you ask a married man for 20 years to think about his wife getting into a car accident and then ask him to think about himself getting into a car accident, the same self spots in his brain will light up, whereas it won't for anybody else. It won't for couples who have not been at the third love of commitment for a long period of time. Commitment arises with the idea that the relationship will persist indefinitely. The only way it can end is if one or both parties of a relationship change individually to the point where it becomes harmful for the other person to self-identify with their partner. Again, think of the husband who becomes alcoholic or the wife who keeps cheating. Sometimes even then the power of commitment holds on, depending on the people. Passion and lust can disappear well after commitment arises, without affecting the commitment. In this way, each love is a prerequisite for the subsequent love to emerge. But once again, it's no longer necessary. Lust is needed for passion, but passion can exist later without it. Passion must exist for commitment, but later on commitment can exist without it. There are timetables for each love. Although these are very arbitrary, they will vary widely from person to person and couple to couple. And it's helpful to think about this. Lust is an instantaneous and comes and goes constantly, being very easy to retrieve once lost. Passion takes anywhere from a few days to a few weeks to emerge, and usually sticks around for 3 to 6 months. In highly compatible couples, it will persevere, but it still requires effort and constant communication to maintain beyond a couple of years. Commitment arises after anywhere from 1 to 3 years together, and remains for a lifetime unless two people grow apart as individuals, in which case it often takes years to undo itself. But what are the hidden costs of happiness? We all want to know how to be happy. But we rarely consider the hidden costs of happiness. It's not free, and despite what CoverGirl or Tony Robbins or the Dalai Lama once told you, it's not always easy breezy either. Anyone who has ever taken an economics class has heard the phrase, "There's no such thing as a free lunch." It means that everything has a cost, even if that cost is not always immediately apparent. To achieve anything, you must give up everything else, or something else. In today's happiness-obsessed culture, we pursue just the opposite. We want to know how to be happy with no cost or the benefits. We want the rewards without the risks and the gain without the pain. But ironically, it's the unwillingness to sacrifice anything, to give up anything, that makes us more miserable. And as with anything else, happiness has costs. It's not free. And despite what CoverGirl or Tony Robbins and the Dalai Lama once told you, it's not always easy breezy figuring out how to be happy either. You must accept imperfection and flaws. Many people believe that if they just collect a house, a spouse, a car, and 2.5 children, everything will be perfect. Life has a checklist. You check each item off, you get to be happy and old for a couple decades. Then you die. But life doesn't work that way. Problems don't go away. They change, they evolve. Today's perfection becomes tomorrow's swampy cesspool of shit. And the quicker we accept that point of life is progress, not perfection, the sooner we can all order pizza and go home. Perfection is an idealization. It's something that is approached but never reached. Whatever your conception of perfect is in your pretty little head, it is in itself an imperfection conception. There is no perfect. There's only what you wish in your head. We don't get to decide what perfection is. We don't know. All we can know is that what is better or worse than what it is now. And even when we're often wrong, we let go of our conception of what is perfect and what should be. We relieve ourselves of stress and frustration of living up to some arbitrary standard. And usually the standard isn't even ours. It's a standard we adopted from other people. Accepting imperfection is hard because it forces us to accept that we have to live with the things we don't like. We don't want to give that up. We want to hold on to the control and to let the whole world know how Canadian democracy should be and why the final season or the season finale to Breaking Bad was all messed up. But life will never conform to all of our desires, ever. And we will always be wrong about something in some way. And ironically, it's the acceptance of this that allows us to be happy with it, allowing us to appreciate the flaws in ourselves and in others, and that, my friends, is a good thing. You must take responsibility for your problems. Blaming the world for all our problems is the easy way out. It's tempting, and it even can be satisfying. We're the victims, and we get to be all emo and indignant at all of the terrible injustices that have been inflicted upon us. We wallow in our imagined victimhood so as to make ourselves feel unique and special in ways in which we never got to feel unique and special anywhere else. But our problems are not unique, and we definitely are not special. The beauty of accepting the imperfection of your own knowledge is that you can no longer be certain that you're not to blame for your own problems. Are you really late because of traffic? Or could you have left earlier? Is your ex really a selfish asshole? Or were you manipulative and overly demanding towards them? Is it really the incompetence of your manager that you lost your promotion? Or was it something more you could have done? The truth is usually somewhere around both, although it varies from situation to situation. But the point is that you can fix your own imperfections and not the imperfections of others. So you may as well go around to go get to work on them. Sure, shit happens. It's not your fault a drunk driver hit you and you lost your leg to a botched surgery. But it's your responsibility to recover from that loss, both physically and emotionally. So get recovering. Stop blaming others for problems in your life that may give you a smidgen of short-term relief, but ultimately it implies something entirely insidious, that you are incapable of controlling your own fate. And that's the most depressing assumption of all to live with. You must feel the fear and do away with it. And just do with it anyway. Bravery is not the absence of fear. Bravery is the feeling of fear, the doubt, the insecurity, and the deciding that something else is more important. If we identify with our moment-to-moment emotional states and sensitivities, our happiness will surge and crash like a deregulated Wall Street derivatives orgy. For those of you who don't know anything about Wall Street, it's really bad. We want sturdy, resilient happiness, not derivative orgies. True, long-lasting, kid-tested, and mother-approved happiness is derived not from our immediate emotional states, but being constantly giddy is not only impossible, but it would be unbearably annoying. But rather it is derived from the deeper values we define for ourselves. Our ultimate life satisfaction is not defined by what we do and what happens to us, but why we do what we do and why it happens to us. You must find deeper purpose to your actions. A better way of saying this is that you must choose what is motivating you. Is it something superficial and external, or something deeper and more meaningful? Being motivated by money for the sake of money leads to unstable emotional regulation and lots of obnoxious and superficial behavior. Being motivated by money so that one can provide a good life for their family and children is a much sturdier foundation to work with. That deeper purpose will motivate one through the stress and fear and inevitable complications that a more superficial motivation would not. Being motivated by the approval of others leads to needy, unattractive behavior. Being motivated by the approval of others because you're an artist and you want to construct art that moves and inspires people in new and powerful ways is far more sustainable and noble. You'll be able to work through disapproval, embarrassments, and the occasional disaster. How does one find their deeper purpose? It's not easy. But then again, robust and resilient, lifelong happiness is an EVA. What? You mean nobody ever told you that? But let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, here's a hint. It has something to do with growth and contribution. Growth means finding a way to make yourself a better person. Contribution means finding a way to make other people better. Look for ways that you can integrate those into your motivations. There's nothing wrong with sex, money, and rock and roll. Hey, and I'm preaching to the choir here. But sex needs to be motivated by something deeper than sex. Then the money needs to be motivated by value, more sustainable than simply money. And the rock and roll needs to be just fucking rock. Find a way to slide growth and or contribution under them, and bam, you get the best of both worlds. You must be willing to fail and be embarrassed. You cannot be a powerful, life-changing presence to some people without being a complete joke and embarrassment to others. Interestingly, this has become probably the most quoted line from a book that I once read, and the one I get told about a lot. I'll put the link up to that book a little later after the show. The beautiful thing about humanity is the diversity of life values. When you live out your values and you let them motivate your actions and behaviors, you will inevitably crash with those values that contradict your own. These people won't like you. They will leave you nasty anonymous quotes or comments on the internet, and they make inappropriate remarks about your mother. Anything you do that's important will inevitably be accompanied by those who wish for you to fail. Not because they're bad people, but because their values differ from yours. And okay, some of them are fucking awful people. As someone much wiser once said to me, haters are gonna hate. And all I can say, bring it on, baby. In any venture, failure is required to make progress. And progress, by definition, is what drives happiness. The progress of ourselves is the progress of others, the progress of our values and what we care about. Without failure, there is no progress. And without progress, there is no happiness. Relish the pain, bathe in the scorn. One of the most important skills in life is how to avoid getting knocked down. But rather, was not how to avoid getting knocked down, but rather learning how to stand back up. As I said before, haters are always going to hate. And stop trying to change yourself. I can't stress this enough. Stop trying to change yourself. That is who you are. It will inevitably lead you to fail and feel hopeless. But if you instead focus on the changing of your actions without worrying about how it changes you as a person, real change becomes much simpler. You can't change yourself, so don't even try. You are who you are. I know that's not what the infomercials and the self-help seminars tell you, but fuck it. They're wrong. You can't change. Like a thirsty man in a desert chasing a mirage or a fat man peering into an empty fridge. There's nothing there. So stop chasing it. Go do something else instead. Why can't you change yourself? Because the whole idea of change is an arbitrary construct. It's something you just made up to make yourself feel good or bad. Here's an example. Yesterday I hadn't written an article. Today I have. Did I change? Well, both yes and no are the correct answers. Depending on how I define change, technically you are both always changing and never changing. It just depends on how you look at it. What you decide is change or not is an imaginary a line drawn in your head. I could decide that changing myself means having $1 billion. I'll then sit around beating myself up for not being able to change for the rest of my life. Therefore, it's not a very useful definition of change. Or I could decide that changing myself means not putting ketchup on my French fries. If that's the case, then change is pretty easy. But does my definition of change mean anything? Not really. So what is change? When people lay around whining to their therapists and ex-wives that they're finally going to change themselves, they are promising something imaginary and made up. If they used to lie and now stop lying, have they changed? Are they permanently, irrevocably fixed? Will they never lie again? And even if they don't, will it matter? Please tell me. Millions of pissed off ex-wives would like to know. We don't know what change is because we don't know what the hell we are. And if I wake up tomorrow and do the exact opposite of everything that I do today, am I a changed person? Or am I simply the same person who decided to try something different? And more importantly, who the fuck cares? I don't, and neither should you. Here's the problem with using the word change. It gets your identity involved. And when you get your identity involved, you become really emotionally attached to the imaginary things. You throw fits and beat yourself up and blame others and decide that you are, in fact, a worthless piece of shit who has no hope in this world. Told you I was going to be blunt. It's one thing to say I'm going to go to the gym each week. It's another thing to say it's time I finally changed and become the type of person who goes to the gym each week. The first statement is simple. You want to go to the gym, so you go, or not. The second statement implies that you go to the gym. You must completely reinvent yourself. And that raises emotional stakes massively. If you succeed, and here's a spoiler, you won't, you'll gain this blissful feeling of being a new person, which will last until next time you feel crappy and want to change again. If you fail, You'll chastise yourself for your irredeemable sloth. And that's the problem with getting your identity involved. If and when you fail at something, you start thinking, maybe I'm kidding myself. Maybe I'm not one of those gym people. Maybe it just isn't me. So why even try? Because you've decided these arbitrary actions represent the totality of your character. You will view yourself as a failure to get off your ass and put on yoga pants as a verdict on your value as a human being. You will hate yourself, and you'll be less motivated to change or do anything else in the future. But on the flip side, if you succeed, like all drugs, you'll get this nice high and momentarily escape your sense of yourself, but soon that high will wear off, and you'll need to define yourself a new type of person or a new type of change to accomplish, and you'll pursue that. Then you become addicted to personal change, the way that Eric Clapton was addicted to cocaine, or Edgar Allan Poe was addicted to drinking until he passed out face down in a ditch. Here's a pro tip. There's no such thing as a gym person. There are just people who go to the gym. Similarly, there's no such thing as a productive person. There are just people who do productive things fairly often. There's no such thing as a lovable person. There are just people who aren't selfish twats. It's not always about you. In fact, it rarely is. In the subtle art of not giving a fuck, the importance of maintaining an identity is that it is defined by as little as possible. That's because when we get our identities involved, when we decide that certain behaviors or events represent our worth as human beings, things get emotionally turbulent. And when things get emotionally turbulent, we tend to do really dumb shit. Instead, think of your life merely as a long sequence of actions and decisions. If you're like most people, many of these actions and decisions are suboptimal. And what most of us mean when we say we'd like to change ourselves is simply that we'd like to make slightly more optimal actions and decisions. For years, I hated mornings. Pretty much in my entire life, I woke up late. This would cause a little snowball of shittiness in my life. I'd be behind on work all day, so then I'd have to stay up half the night working. Then I'd be tired and stressed out the next day, so I'd stay up even later the next day trying to catch up, and by the end of the week I'd be a wreck. So to escape, I'd go out drinking, partying to unwind too much, which would just fuck me up even further the next week. And that's the sad reality of most people, or there's a lot of people out there that are going through that. I still somehow managed to build a career. Don't ask me how, but I do have a little answer for you, and it's a small truckload of caffeine. But instead of recognizing that I did okay despite my own bad habits, I made it about me. I made it a part of who I was. I decided it was my identity. I said, yeah, I'm a badass. Fucking waking up early, fuck getting sleep. I don't need that shit. Look at me, Mom, I can work all night. You can get away with that when you're 22, but you can't when you're 34. In my 30s, I'm beginning to struggle with productivity. And instead of recognizing my terrible habits, I told myself, well, I'm just not a morning person. Oh, I don't do that sort of morning routine. Without me realizing this was a tantamount to me giving up before I started. The times I tried to get up early or to work out first thing or eat a healthy breakfast, I'd struggle and immediately tell myself, see, this morning stuff isn't for me. But eventually, I had to get over myself. I had to decide that, you know what, I don't know who the hell I am or what I'm doing. But I do know that historically and scientifically and anecdotally, and anyone who is not an idiot knows that waking up in the morning and starting the day off with a nice simple routine is healthy and productive, is a healthy, productive way to live one's life. And so I did it. I removed my identity from it and just did it because it's a good thing to do. Now I get up early, I meditate usually, I eat something healthy and bang out a bunch of writing as soon as I possibly can. Does that make me a morning person? Does that make me a productive person? Who knows? Who cares? I don't. And it was not by caring that made it possible for me to do it. Keep yourself out of your decisions, because most likely it's not about you. Simply ask yourself, is this a good thing to do? If you said yes, then go do it. And if you failed to do it, is it still a good thing to do? Yes? Then go do it again. And if at any point you realize that it wasn't good, as good as you thought it was, then don't do it again. End of story. Change your actions and not yourself. Most of us who feel stuck in certain habits are stuck because we're emotionally embedded in unhealthy behaviors. A smoker doesn't smoke cigarettes. They develop a whole identity around smoking. It alters their social life, their eating habits, their sleeping habits, how they see themselves and others. They become the smoker to their family and friends. They develop a relationship with cigarettes in the same way you and I would develop a relationship with a pet or a favorite toy. When someone decides to change themselves and quit smoking, they are essentially attempting to change their entire identity. Of all the relationships, habits, and assumptions that have gone into X amount of years of doing a singular thing, no wonder they fail. The trick to quitting smoking or to change any habit is to recognize your identity. The elaborate mental framework you devised in your mind and labeled me doesn't actually exist. It's arbitrary, it's a facade, and it can be raised or dropped at will. You are not a smoker. You are a person who chooses to smoke. You are not a night person. You are a person who chooses to be active at night and sleep through the morning. You are not unproductive. You are a person who currently chooses to do things that do not feel useful. You are not unlovable. You are a person who currently feels unloved. And changing these actions is as simple as that. Changing your actions. One action at a time. Forget labeling it. Forget social accountability. In fact, research has found that sharing goals with others can often backfire. Forget making a big hoo-ha-ha about who you are or what you are or what the fucking Pope thinks about you. Because he doesn't. And neither do the rest of us. And neither do you, for that matter. Your identity is a made-up thing, and you're emotionally attached to it. It's a mirage in the desert, a ketchup bottle in an empty fridge. And the quickest way to change yourself is to realize that there's no real self to change. But that, I just mentioned all of that because we need to define ourselves, find out what our own faults. And going back to relationships, here's how we find out compatibility and chemistry. Sorry, I kind of digressed for a bit there. But having chemistry in relationships and being compatible with someone is not always the same thing. A lot of dating advice glosses over the concepts of compatibility and chemistry, assuming that most people have an intuitive grasp of what these two words mean and why they're so important to a successful relationship. And why we kind of assume we know what compatibility and chemistry mean and whether or not we have them. Dating advice mostly ignores compatibility and chemistry because they can't be faked or changed. Instead, most dating advice focuses on the nuts and bolts of dating, what to say, when to say it, how not to look like an ass and face. Dating advice also caters to people who want the hacks. They want to know how to get that person who feels is out of their league to someone to somehow trick or coax or cajole them into noticing us. The girl we've never had before, the man we've never fantasized about, or the man that we have fantasized about, I should say. And if that guy or girl who's out of our league is actually not compatible with us, well, we really don't want to hear about that. But in terms of compatibility and chemistry, are often used interchangeably, but they're not the same thing. A lot of people use the words loosely to try and define that thing which exists in the space between two people, the unspeakable, the unseen connection or lack thereof. But they're not the same thing at all. And understanding the difference is crucial if you want a happy, healthy, and long-term relationship. Compatibility is the natural alignment of lifestyle choices and values of two people. A youth minister and a drug dealer are probably the most incompatible, and I doubt many end up dating each other. If I value women who are intelligent and educated, and I meet a high school dropout who is attracted to guys, who has big muscles and likes to hunt deer, and when we have fundamental incompatibility, that will probably never be overcome, and we will never date one another. Compatibility is the long-term potential of two people. High compatibility between people comes from similarities, in their lifestyles and values. And generally speaking, educated liberal people usually date each other. And hedonists usually date other hedonists. Insane religious nuts usually date other insane religious nuts. Chemistry, on the other hand, represents the emotional connection present when two people are together. When there is a high degree of chemistry, that strong connection can bring out warm, fuzzy emotions in each other, creating a kind of positive feedback loop through which two people continue to make each other feel better and better. When you have a high degree of chemistry with someone, they monopolize your thoughts and all your free time. You stay awake thinking about them or talking about them or with them until the sun comes up, even though you feel like it's just been an hour that went by. You'll hope that every call or text is about him or her. You'll walk through life constantly wondering, what she thinks about you. Where they are in a song, a bird, a walk through the park, a traffic jam, or a colonoscopy. Call it passion, call it love, call it sickness. The basic traits of you and their personality and their slightest behaviors ravage each other's dopamine receptors in a neurological orgy of starry-eyed dreaminess. Specific examples of what creates strong chemistry are harder to peg. And it may be the way someone laughs at your jokes, the questions they ask you about your day, or the way you hold each other in bed, or what you want to do in bed, or how they help you decorate your new apartment. Chemistry is made up of subtle behaviors and dispositions that mesh with behaviors and dispositions of the other person. What's created is a kind of closed karmic loop in which chemistry is felt by both parties equally. The most important rule about chemistry is that whatever you're feeling, he or she is most likely feeling the same way. And you almost become empaths with one another. The artist Alex Gray once said, "True love is when two people have pathologies that complement one another." And he was only half joking. The high levels of chemistry usually come from the opposite, yet complementary qualities in people. A woman who is highly strung, energetic and slightly neurotic will tend to have a high degree of chemistry with a guy who is relaxed, mellow, and open. Introverts often have natural chemistry with extroverts. People who are orderly and intense planners sometimes work best with people who are spontaneous and unorganized. Unlike a lack of compatibility, a lack of chemistry doesn't repel. It simply results in a lack of emotional intensity. Things just feel kind of dead and boring. Chemistry is also reflected in the bedroom. A lack of chemistry will mean boring, emotionless sex. A high degree of chemistry will mean intense, life-altering, heart-pounding sex that causes your mind to cosmically splatter itself on the walls of your consciousness. Compatibility and chemistry don't always necessarily occur together. A relationship with high compatibility but little chemistry is likely to be boring yet comfortable series of meetings and conversations, dry and dull until both parties simply stop caring and drift apart. Or they consummate their mutual convenience by getting married and finding themselves in a lifetime of uncomplicated and often asexual companionship. And sadly, this arrangement isn't uncommon. Chemistry without compatibility, on the other hand, usually leads to disaster. Sometimes it can be seen as simple as not living in the same part of the world, but it's often far more complicated than that. When two people are completely incompatible, their behavior becomes completely irrational. Too often, two incompatible people initiate a cycle of mutual emotional immolation, spiraling through their love-hate cycles together at the speed of life. People find themselves saying things like, "I don't care if he's married to a convicted felon. We're meant to be together." Or, "Look, I know she faked being pregnant to get to me to propose to her. But you know, it may just be fate, right?" Meanwhile, friends stare, jaws agape, unsure whether to risk the backlash of trying to snap them out of it or to feign support while their love-blind torture victim power continues to spin helpless and deluded in a tornado of love. High levels of chemistry with major incompatibilities is bad news, and I mean, guys, really, really bad news. These relationships usually begin quickly and passionately, exploding like a geyser before dying down just as quickly as it erupted. It tends to happen when logic kicks in and when reality makes itself known. It tends to happen when logic kicks in and suddenly you realize how fucking offensive you find each other. But getting out of such a relationship is easier said than done. Your heart says yes, but your head says no. And you convince your head to say yes, which in turn makes your heart say no. At this point, your decision making usually defaults to your genitals. Though their track record for decision making is about as good as a drunk third grader's, which only leads to embarrassing public arguments, unpaid drink tabs, thrown iPhones, changed locks, unanswered phone calls, tear-ridden voicemails, and the sterile interior of a clinic. Or if you're lucky, and oh God, please don't give me a false positive, you piece of shit 99-cent pregnancy test from a 7-Eleven experience, which is guaranteed to challenge anyone's sanity. And then there you are, wherever you go, as they say, and you find yourself jobless, with 2 one-way tickets to Bermuda that were never used, 6 stitches, slashed car tires, a shattered cell phone, but at least that psycho is fucking gone, even though you still kind of miss them. The experience is vicious, yet thrilling. And it will never let you forget that we are, after all, animals. Not that I'm speaking from personal experience or anything. Nope. But you need to know what you want. Navigating the dating landscape with confidence requires that you understand these concepts. If you want to ultimately end up enjoying your time with an amazing partner, and I don't mean enjoying fucking, even though it should be a given, I mean truly enjoying, then it's important you get a cognitive handle on these emotional indicators. The most important aspect is understanding what you want. What makes a person compatible with you? What personality traits have chemistry with you? The first question you should ask yourself is, what do I want? Most people don't even go to that question. You need to know what you like and what you want in a partner. And if you don't, then you need to cautiously gain enough experience until you know. Back when I was dating, I found that I was incapable of dating people who weren't incredibly smart. It could make it 2 or 3 dates with a person on average intelligence or less. And that's solely by merit of drowning my face in alcohol until I became incapable of listening to them any longer. Since a long-term relationship with these types of people would necessitate it's an auto to take up alcoholism as a hobby. We inevitably part ways. And I've learned that I have chemistry with people who are driven, ambitious, and passionate.
Their personalities work with mine in a unique yet comfortable way for both of us. I found my personality meshes well with people who are a tad neurotic and generally too laid back for my own good. I also click with people who appreciate dark, sarcastic wit and are very giving and caring. I see myself around teachers, nurses, social workers, volunteer workers, humanitarian type people, the givers of the world, and sometimes having a serious relationship. But I said that to show you, give you an example of people that work for me. But you need to figure out who works for you. The no bullshit way to find the one. Finding, lastly, true love does not come from saying the right things or having money or looks or whatever. It's much simpler than that. And here's how. You're sick and tired of all the dating apps, the websites, and trying to meet people that in your kickball league, and how many awkward first dates can you go on till you find a normal person? And what's with all the fake personalities and flaky people who seem more interested in themselves and can't be bothered to make a slight change in their schedule to, go out with you? If this describes the majority of your romantic life, I want you to open up your mind a little bit and start looking at the things a little bit more differently. First, consider this. Everyone wants a perfect partner, but few people want to be the perfect partner. I think the vast majority of problems around finding someone are caused by uneven expectations like this. But when you flip this on its head and you start taking a little more responsibility in the area of your life, when you start focusing on what kind of life you want to live and what kind of partner you want to be, you'll start to see all the flakes and the narcissists and liars that fade into the background. This deceptive behavior. You'll start making genuine connections with people and make each other's life more enjoyable. For years, I probably obsessed a little too much over this part of my life. But after stumbling through one unhealthy relationship after another, I learnt a very important lesson. The best way to find the amazing person is to become an amazing person. So if you have a willingness to have an open mind and take a painful look at yourself, then keep listening. Let's begin with perhaps a bold statement. The root of all unattractiveness is neediness. The root of all attractiveness is non-neediness. But what exactly is neediness? And neediness occurs when you place a higher priority on what others think of you than what you think of yourself. Anytime you alter words or your behavior to fit someone else's needs rather than your own, that is needy. Anytime you lie about your interests, hobbies, or background, that is needy. Anytime you pursue a goal to impress others rather than to fulfill yourself, that is needy. Whereas most people focus on what behavior is attractive or unattractive, what determines neediness and therefore attractiveness is the why behind your behavior. You can say the coolest thing or do what everybody else does. But if you do it for the wrong person, it will come across as needy and desperate and turn people off. It's not the what of your behavior that is unattractive or attractive. It is the why of your behavior. People can sense needy behavior right away. Chances are you can tell when somebody is being needy for your attention or affection. And it's a major turn-off for many people. This is because neediness is actually a form of manipulation. And people have a keen nose for manipulative bullshit. Think about it. If you're acting needy, you're trying to get someone to think of you in a certain way or act a certain way towards you for your own benefit. Think about the way you feel when someone is blatantly trying to sell you something with high-pressure salesy tricks. It feels wrong. It's a similar feeling when someone is acting a certain way to get you to like them. Now, we all get needy at times because, of course, we do care about what others think of us. In fact, it's human nature. But the key here is that at the end of the day, you should care more about what you think of yourself than what others think. To give you a few examples, a needy person wants their friends to think that they're cool or funny or smart, or will constantly try to impress them with their coolness or humor or smart opinions about everything. A non-needy person just enjoys spending time with their friends for the sake of spending time with them and doesn't feel the need to perform around them. A needy person buys clothes based on whether or not they think of the other people they look good in them, or at least that's what they think is safe to wear. A non-needy person buys clothes based on their personal sense of style that they've developed over time. It's commonly associated with eccentric people. A needy person stays at a soul-crushing job they hate because of the prestige it gives them in the eyes of their friends, their family, and their peers. A non-needy person values their time, their skills, more than what other people think, and will find work that fulfills and challenges them based on their own values. A needy person will try to impress a date by dropping hints about how much money they make, or important people they know or dated, or where they went to school. A non-needy person generally tries to get to know the other person to find out if they're compatible with one another. We behave in needy ways. And when we feel bad about ourselves, we try to use the affection and approval of others to compensate for the lack of affection and approval of ourselves. And that is another root cause of our dating problems, the inability to take care of ourselves. No one can see your value as a person if you don't value yourself first. And taking care of yourself, when done from a place of non-neediness, is what demonstrates that you value yourself. It also goes into worth too. Now, there's a fine line between taking care of yourself for the right and wrong reasons. Don't be fooled here. If you do all these things I outline in order to get others to like you, you've already lost. Again, that's needy behavior. Remember? You should take care of yourself because you genuinely want to be a healthy, intelligent, well-rounded individual for the sake of being healthy. Intelligent, well-rounded individual that values your own self-worth over what others think of you. Think of it this way. People won't love you until you love yourself. And so with that said, I'm going to give you a list of major areas of your life you should be focusing on if you don't already. Health. Taking care of your physical and mental health is the single biggest step you can take towards improving your life, as it is the biggest and most enduring impact on virtually every other area of your life, including dating and relationships. Besides making you look better, eating right, exercising consistently, simply makes you feel better on a day-to-day basis. And when you feel better, you have more energy and your mood is raised a little. It's a lot easier to get your ass out of the house every day and into the world, so that you can engage with people genuinely and confidently. You're also more pleasant to be around. And if you have past traumas or psychological issues that need to be dealt with, do it. Talk to friends and relatives. Get therapy if you need it. You're ultimately the one who can help yourself the most. And it's okay if you need a little help in this area. It's what you have me for. Get it taken care of. Finances. Finances is a major cause of stress for a lot of people. It can be so stressful, in fact, that most people end up ignoring a lot of their financial problems altogether. And this, in turn, leads to a vicious cycle where ignoring your money problems only makes them worse. And you end up even more stressed as time goes on. Long-term stress like this makes you less attractive. It saps your energy, causes health issues, and generally makes you a dick to be around. So if this describes you, then it's time to get real about your finances. Learn about your personal finance. Cut out the waste. Find ways to make more money. And in the short and long term, open savings accounts for emergencies. Pay down debt as quickly as possible. Learn the basics of investing. Short term, get this area of your life handled so that it's not dragging you down in other areas. Career. To put it bluntly, nobody else wants to be around someone, let alone date someone who complains about their job. Look, I get it. Not everyone can have their dream jobs or start a billion-dollar business tomorrow. We're all born with varying levels of raw talent in one area or another. And sometimes our talents and passions can be turned into careers. Other times we just have to work normal jobs to make ends meet and pursue our talents and passions on the side. But regardless of your current situation, there is absolutely some action you can take right now towards finding meaningful work that will enjoy, or at least work you don't dread. Apply for new jobs, go for job fairs and network with people, take classes, develop useful skills that you enjoy. Learn how to interview better and how to negotiate better terms of employment. Your social life. If you end up on the same 3 or 4 bars with the same 3 or 4 people every weekend, and then wonder why you can't meet interesting, attractive people who you can connect with well, just think about how backward that is for a moment. Developing an active social life not only makes for a more fulfilling, enjoyable life, it also puts you in contact with more and different people, upping your chances of meeting someone you click with. I'll cover this more later, but for now, a few ideas to get you started are things like exploring new hobbies, an interest in taking an art class, signing up for martial arts or yoga, joining a community sports league, etc., etc. Do things that get you off your ass and out interacting with people. This may pay off immensely in all areas of your life, and you'll notice all of these areas take quite a bit of time and effort to develop. In fact, you probably never stop working on each of them to some degree, and that's okay. Because the best way to get these areas of your life handled is to develop healthy, consistent habits around them. The point isn't to reach some state of nirvana in your life where you have six-pack abs, bazillion dollars, and a packed social schedule with thousands of friends, and then finally you'll suddenly find true love. The point is to just always be working towards being the best version of yourself you can be at any given time. But how do you find true love, and where do you find it? The question is, are you deeply interested in social injustice? Are you a health nut? Are you a party animal, a socialite? Are you into art, music, or maybe you love the outdoors? Develop your interests first. Simply for the joy and pleasure you get from experiencing them. Then, as a byproduct, you will meet people who share your values and are attracted to you based on who you are rather than what you say or how you act. Here's a slightly ridiculous example to illustrate my point. An intelligent woman who's devoted to her career as a scientist probably won't have the best luck meeting men she's compatible with by competing in a wet t-shirt contest. Not that everyone goes to wet t-shirt contests is stupid. It's just that she'd be better off developing more intellectual pursuits when she's interested in, so she can meet people whose interests and values are more aligned with her own. Things like signing up for a language class, volunteering in a local museum, attending art galleries and lectures, and so on. So if you're really into sci-fi or Dungeons and Dragons or 8th century medieval art, don't go to clubs and bars looking for love. Similarly, if you like quiet nights at home and enjoy knitting, joining a skydiving club might not be the first place you should look to expand your social circle and meet potential dates. And it's okay to experiment with expanding your interests, but as always, do it for you, not to meet Mr. or Mrs. Perfect. But let me just quickly touch base about online dating and apps. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with online dating, and studies have shown that more and more people are meeting online and having short and long-term relationships. It's definitely doable, and it can be a great way to meet people, especially if you're new to a city, extremely busy with work, or just getting back out there. With that said, most people don't use online dating very effectively. In fact, I think I just read an article the other day saying that a lot of people portray the darker characters who they are on their profiles. If you're having problems with people being flaky and or lukewarm, I'd hate to be the one to tell you this, but it's not them, it's you. You see, online dating and dating apps are great for meeting people quickly and efficiently, and that's about it. After that, it's up to you to be bold and clearly communicate what you're looking for. The problem is with this, it'll freak some people out. It'll cause people to ghost on you, and I'm telling you here that this is a good thing. Think about it. The people who freak out and ghost on you are the flakes and wishy-washy people that you're so tired of going on dates with. It's best to weed them out as quickly as possible and not to play into their wishy-washy games. This is doubly true the older you get. If you tell someone on a first date that you're looking for a long-term relationship and it scares them off, then you just did yourself a huge favor. If simply stating your general intentions freaks somebody out, then the reality is that they don't want the same thing as you, and or they have their own issues to work out. Learn to see it as a blessing when someone eliminates themselves for you. Your job is to simply express yourself honestly and not be ashamed of that. And here's where we get to honest communication and vulnerability. There's a dizzying amount of dating advice out there, and most of it, I'm sad to say, is bullshit. So much of it focuses on the tactics and strategies of attracting someone that it completely misses the whole point of the joy of meeting someone you connect with. I'll give you an example. Say this, don't say that, wait 3.46 days before calling, texting them back, touch themselves on their left arm once every 7 minutes while sub-communicating your socio-sexual status, smile but not too much, act subtly interested but not too eager, always keep them guessing to keep up the mystery. Yeah, fuck that. Look, part of being mature is functioning adult in this world is being able to communicate and express yourself honestly on an emotional level. For many people, especially those who have had troubles in their romantic lives, this is hard. They've either been taught how to be vulnerable in a healthy way. Actually, I should correct myself in saying that. They've either never been taught how to be vulnerable in a healthy way, or they've gotten so jaded about dating that they figure, what's the real point? So they throw up their guard before anyone has had the chance to really get to know who they are. Look, vulnerability, when done correctly, is actually a show of strength and power. Telling someone that you like them and want to get to know them better doesn't give them all the power unless you're entirely invested into the way that they respond to you. If instead you are merely expressing yourself to make your desires known and you're willing to accept the consequences, good or bad, others will notice that. And it's incredibly attractive. I've written so many times about vulnerability. And you can go over to my website if you want to read more about that. If you think you need to work on being more vulnerable, you can go over to somafusion.com. Go into the resources tab on my website. But I want to make something clear about being vulnerable. This is not another tactic or strategy to use to get people to like you. And by that definition is neediness. We always come back to neediness, don't we? A person who is truly secure and comfortable with being vulnerable is simply expressing themselves and saying, this is who I am, faults and all. You don't have to like me for me, and that is okay. And when people don't like you for who you are, then fuck them. I'm gonna say that. And heed the law of fuck yes or no. And I say fuck yes or fuck no because it's quite simple. The law of fuck yes or no states that in dating and relationships, both parties must be a fuck yes about each other. Why? Because attractive, non-needy, high self-worth people don't have time for people who they are not excited to be with and who are not excited to be with them. If the law of fuck yes or no applies to meeting and dating someone, sex, long-term relationships, hell, even friendships, if you meet someone and one or both of you aren't a fuck yes for seeing each other again, that's a fuck no. If you go on a first date and aren't a fuck yes about the second date, that's a fuck no. It's not just idealistic passion romance I'm talking about here. You might be going through a rough patch with somebody and you're both a fuck yes for working on it. Awesome. Do that. If you've been with someone for years and one or both of you aren't a fuck yes for being together for the foreseeable future, that's a fuck no. In any long-term relationship, problems arise and arguments are bound to happen. But a good sign of being a fuck yes with someone is that you still want to be together even when you're pissing each other off. The point is that you won't have any apprehensions if you're the one for each other. The point is that you will find yourself saying fuck yes together for each and every step in the relationship, despite the apprehensions you might have. From the first date to the second date to the 100th date, to doing the naked horizontal electric slide together, to making it official, to fighting each other, to moving in together, to getting married, to buying insurance together, and so on. When you think about it, the law of fuck yes or no is actually a byproduct of everything that we've covered so far. Non-needy people who take care of themselves and communicate honestly don't have the time for people who play games or who are wishy-washy about being with them. They have too much self-respect and don't care about what wishy-washy people think of them. And so if you take nothing else away from this, just know that the way to find true love is to be the best version of yourself and do it unapologetically without shame. You'll attract people into your life who connect with you on your level, and just as importantly, you'll weed out all the people who don't. And that is, my ladies and gentlemen, the whole point, isn't it? But let's think about this for a minute. Go back to the fuck yes or no. Why would you ever choose to be with someone who is not excited to be with you? Think about this for a moment. Why would you ever choose to be with someone who is not excited to be with you? There's a gray area in dating for many people get hung up on. A gray area where feelings are ambiguous, or one person has stronger feelings than the other. It's a gray area because it causes real, tangible issues. She said she's not interested, but she still flirts with me, so what do I need to do to get her? Well, I know she likes me, but she didn't call me back last weekend. What should I do? He treats me well when he's around, but he's hardly around. What does that mean? Most dating advice exists to solve this gray area for people. Say this line, text her this, call him this many times, wear that. Much of it gets exceedingly analytical, to the point where some men and women actually spend more time analyzing behaviors than actually, behaving. Frustration with this gray area also drives many people to unnecessary manipulation, drama, and game playing. like forgetting a jacket at her place because so she'll have to call to see you again, or making him wait until he's taken you on 3 dates before you'll sleep with him. These things may seem very clever and exciting to some people who are stuck or frustrated. But this dating advice misses the point. If you're in the grey area to begin with, you're already lost. And you've already lost. So let me ask you again. Why would you ever be excited with someone who is not excited to be with you? If they're not happy with you now, what makes you think that they'll be happy with you later? And why do you make an effort to convince someone to date you when they make no effort to convince you? What does that say about you? That you believe you need to convince people to be with you. Let me give you a hint. It also implies that you wouldn't even want to be with yourself, let alone date yourself. I just wrote a little piece up on Facebook about that the other day. You wouldn't even buy a dog that bites you all the time. And you wouldn't even be friends with someone who regularly ditches you. You wouldn't work a job that doesn't pay you. Then why the hell are you trying to make a girlfriend out of a woman who doesn't want to date you? Where's your fucking self-respect? The entrepreneur Derek Sivers once wrote a blog where he said, if I'm not saying hell yeah to something, then I say no. And it served him well in the business world, and now I'd like to apply it in the dating world. And because I'm more of a vulgar asshole than Derek is, I'll christen mine the law of fuck yes or no. It states that when you want to get involved with someone new in whatever capacity, they must inspire you to say fuck yes in order for you to proceed with them. It also states that when you want to, it also implies that both parties must be enthusiastic about the prospect of one another's company. Why? Because attractive, non-needy, high self-worth people don't have time for people who are not excited to be with and who are not excited to be with them. And I know it may sound a bit idealistic to some, but it really does have tangible benefits on your dating life. Because you have, it goes on the ideology that you are no longer being strung along by people that aren't really into you. It ends all the headaches. It ends all the wishing and hoping. It ends all the disappointment and anger that inevitably flows. Start practicing self-respect. Become the rejected, not the rejected. I've done it many times. Do I feel shame about it? Nope. No longer pursue people who are, let me say this right. No longer pursue people you are so on for ego purposes. We've all been there. We were so about somebody, but then when we went along with it because nothing better else was around, and we all have a few we'd like to take back, no more. Consent issues are instantly resolved. If someone plays games with you, playing hard to get, or pressuring you into doing something that you're unsure about, the answer is now easy. Or as often I like to say in regards to dating, if you have to ask, then that's your answer. Establish strong personal boundaries and enforce them. Meaning, maintaining strong boundaries not only makes one more confident and attractive, but also helps to preserve one's sanity in the long run. Always know where you stand with the other person, since you're now freeing up so much time and energy from people you're not into, and people who are not that into you. You find yourself perpetually in interactions where people's intentions are clear and enthusiastic, and that's sweet. But this is all applicable to not just dating, sex and relationships and even friendships. And you may have absolutely nothing in common with the bartender, but they're hot and they're interested in getting down. Is it a fuck yes for sex? If it is, then game on. Wrapped up in that sweet guy who treats you so well, except goes weeks without calling you and then suddenly disappears for a couple of drinks and a round of the horizontal poker. They've been wondering if he really likes you. Do his excuses of being so busy all the time seem legit? It doesn't sound like the answer is a fuck yes. It's time to move on. Making out with a girl at your house every time you go take her t-shirt off. She swats your hand away. That is not a fuck yes, my friend. And therefore, it's a no, and you shouldn't pressure her. The best sex is always a fuck yes. Both people are shouting fuck yes as they hop between the sheets together. If she's not hopping, then there's no fucking. And let me give you a hint, fellas. This is a great time to ask a girl why she's not comfortable and what she's looking for from you. That by itself, you know, is treating her like a human and empathizing with her, and it often solves the problem. Want to date that woman you met last weekend, but she keeps ignoring your texts and calls, not sure what you want to say or do, especially since she seemed so happy to go out with you when you initially met her? Well, my friend, this obviously is not a fuck yes. And therefore it is a no. Delete her number and move on. Fuck yes or no applies to relationships as well. A girlfriend works with a guy who got married because it seemed like the right thing to do. You do your taxes because it seems the right thing to do. You wipe your infant's ass because it seems like the right thing to you. You don't marry someone because it seems like the right thing to do. You marry them because you can't fucking imagine ever not wanting to be with them. Unsurprisingly, with that scenario that I just mentioned there, the guy was actually cheating on his wife every chance he got. And so the marriage became not a fuck yes for him. And therefore, from the very beginning, it should have been a no. But he went along with it. And so sometimes things will apply differently on different levels. You may be a fuck yes for a friendship with somebody, but mildly excited to have sex with them. Therefore, it's a no. You may be a fuck yes on banging someone's brains out, but a definite no on actually spending any time with them. If you apply the law of fuck yes and no to your decision making as it suits your needs, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be falling in knee-wobbling love at first sight. It doesn't mean that you have to be completely convinced that someone is right for you. You can be a fuck yes without getting to know someone better. You can be a fuck yes about seeing someone again because you think that there's something there. You can be a fuck yes about giving things a few months to pan out to see if you can actually fix the problems in the relationship. You can be a fuck yes about trying to fix things in an unhappy relationship because you can see future potential. The point is, both of you and the other person, you and the other person need to be a fuck yes about something, and it must be the same thing. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time. But the real beauty is that it simplifies the problems you all have in the dating life. And by saying fuck yes or no, there are only really two problems one can have. First problem is people who never feel fuck yes for anybody they meet. If you are lukewarm on absolutely everyone you meet, then either your demographics are way off, or you suffer from a lack of vulnerability and are protecting yourself by remaining indifferent and unenthused by all of those around you. Remember, it's not your job to look for something cool in everyone you meet. It's not their job to show you. This is life, not a fucking sales convention. Learning to appreciate people you meet is a skill you cultivate. So get on with it. This doesn't mean you have to fall in love with everyone who breathes in your direction. It means that you need to take responsibility for your ability to connect with people you are meeting. The second problem is people who never meet others who feel like a fuck yes for them. If all the people you pursue give you a mild response or outright rejections, then it's time to focus on improving yourself. Ask yourself, what is it about yourself that would inspire others to say fuck yes about you? If the answer is not obvious, then you get to work. Build yourself into a person that others would say a fuck yes to. And this is the ultimate dating advice lesson. Man, woman, gay, straight, trans, furry, whatever. Or a damn meatball for all I care. Whatever floats your boat. The only real dating advice is self-improvement. Everything else is a distraction, a futile battle in the gray area, a prolonged ego trip. Because yes, with the right tools and performance, you may be able to con somebody into sleeping with you, dating you, even marrying you. But you will have had won the battle by sacrificing the war of long-term happiness. And before we finish up, I'm going to tell you the small signs that somebody truly loves you. The first one, if you need to vent, they are always there for you. Someone who doesn't love you won't be interested in spending time to listen to your problems. They will have other priorities. Those who love you instead want to do something if they see you are struggling. Number 2, they can't wait to see you. I cannot stress this enough. Be with someone who can't wait to spend time with you. If someone loves you, they will feel the need to see you, and you will notice it. You won't have to wait 1 month before seeing them, unless you're in a long distance relationship, then it's an entirely different story. Time apart is essential to a healthy relationship. You don't want to spend a whole time with someone, no matter how much you love each other. You must make enough time to pursue your dreams and focus on your hobbies or your career. In fact, time apart is exactly what makes you long for the other person and makes your moments together more memorable. Number 3, they want to make the relationship work. If someone loves you, they want you to be happy with them. Whenever you two have a disagreement, they will focus on handling the conflict and sorting things out. If someone doesn't truly care, they will perceive the relationship talks as a waste of time. Instead, someone who loves you will make communication a top priority because they want to work on things. Number 4, they want you to meet their loved ones. Let's be honest. When you're in love with somebody, you want the world to know you two are exclusive. In particular, you want your loved ones to know it, and you can't wait to introduce them to your significant other. Someone who doesn't care won't feel the need to introduce you to their family or their best friends. They won't feel the need to talk to them about you. In fact, they might even avoid it. Number 5, they want to meet your loved ones. Another sign someone is in love with you is that they not only introduce you to their family and friends, but they are also curious to meet your loved ones. They probably won't pressure you into it, but they will communicate their interest in knowing them, and they will make an effort to get along with them. Number 6, they remember everything about you, even the small little details. Someone who is not into you won't even notice the smallest details. If someone loves you, instead they will impress you with their memory. They will remember almost every tiny detail of your first dates and how you two met. Those who care about us tend to remember a lot of what we say and what we do. Number 7, they offer to help you. If someone doesn't love you, they won't feel the need to help you. So if someone who loves you instead will want to alleviate at the least bit of your stress if they can. They will show you their love through their actions, especially if their primary love language is acts of service. Number 8, they talk about the past. Another small sign someone is in love with you is that they talk about the past. Your past as a couple. Most likely they will do it a lot and with a smile on their face. Not because they not only love you, but they love the memories that you guys have together. Someone who doesn't genuinely care won't think about much of the beautiful moments you spent together, or even the bad moments for that fact, because they don't place the same value on it as you do. And number 9, they talk about the future a lot. As someone who loves you talks about the past, they will also mention the future a lot, your future together. When they make plans, they will always include you because it feels natural to them to see you in their future. Not only that, but they will also have thousands of ideas of things you can do together. They will mention a movie that they'll want to watch with you, a concert they want to go with you, a country that they want to visit with you, or even the house that they want to live in with you. True love looks and feels like this. You know and feel the other person is there for you and sees you as a part of their life, today, tomorrow, and forevermore. And you won't find yourself wondering if they are into you or not. And you won't spend hours analyzing the behavior with your family and your friends. And you will know that they genuinely care. And with that said, P.S. I love you. I'll be back next week, and we will be talking about another subject. I'm not sure if I'm going to have a guest on or not, but you'll find out if you watch me up on social media. Look for the clues. You'll see what the next show is going to be about. I will be back next Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network. If you want to find me, I am on social media, all platforms and social media. You can find my websites at soma-fusion.com and somafusionmedia.com. And of course, follow the links. You can read some of my articles out there. One popular one is about twin flames. If you have any questions, you can email me at the Somafusion Academy at gmail.com. But until then, have a lovely evening. And remember, I see you and I love you. Good night, everyone.